It's a good one. It's a good one. Go gadget this thing. I've got to distract these off. I should have done it before. Always running behind. You working it, Flip? This is a great start. Starting right. Jared's coming in pretty quick. What's up, everybody? You ready for another stupid week? This is so stupid. Let's see. Who we got here? We got Christopher. Oh, my. Prior to discovering this channel, I don't think I ever asked myself, is it Thursday yet? Troy, what's up? Yep. Time to head out to Port Simon City Gang. Ed Bedlam, the GA meeting on Thursday, too. Last week I said I think Nelson is going to croak before next autumn. I think that's probably true. It seems like it anyway. But I don't know about that guy. What do you think about that guy? Nelson.
He's so yeah, what they say, he's being relieved of church activity assignments.
They said that?
And what is he, 100 years old?
There was just news today.
Yeah, it was in the news that say like for help.
That what's his name? Holland has kidney problems and will be out for 2 months and now cannot give that speech. And of course, DeLynn and company rejoiced. He's not going to be speaking at SUU. We are saved from musket.
Oh.
We are saved from all the musket fire.
An even more screwed up guy.
Let's put Nelson. So Nelson's being relieved of what?
So I had to look at Nelson's president and Oaks and Eyring are the counselors now. Does that mean Oaks is next in line?
Yeah. He's not much younger, but I mean, if there's anybody who's going to hang on to get it, it's that dude. Let's see. So, holy crap. So how much of all the stuff did you watch this week? I'm kind of, I got a little irritated earlier today.
Following Wormses.
Really? So my
internet connection is being shitty, but I'm not sure if I can make it better. Why, are you hearing me late?
What's going on?
It's just like everything is slow and you're coming in all Chinese and bits and pieces.
Didn't you see on Dan McClellan? What's up, Maple Lake Mountain? Did you guys see Dan McClellan? Dan McClellan had a video today that a couple guys said, hey, what if you use my name and my name in Chinese was ding dong ding dong? And Dan McClellan bleeped that out of his video because ding dong is racist, I guess. But
that happened?
Yeah, he bleeped out that Chinese speech that, and made it, it was like Jimmy Kimmel's old This Week in Useless. Jimmy Kimmel used to do funny useless censorship stuff. And the useless censorship would show like how it made everything sound worse, which is actually, I heard back in the day that all of that Ozzy Osbourne stuff, those guys were never swearing as much as it seemed like they were adding bleeps to make it seem like those guys were swearers. But Jimmy Kimmel used to do This Week in Useless Bleeping. But Dan McClellan, some guys were saying like, well, how did they say Jesus' name? Is it like you come to English and they say, we're giving you this name, Tim? Like if somebody's name is Ding Dong, we're just going to call you Bob. And Dan bleeped the ding dong, so it like came out.
Really, he shouldn't even be endorsing that flagrant racism.
It's so he called it racist right after.
Oh, for sure.
What? He's a linguist too, so
linguist here. Wait, he's a linguist?
He acts
couldn't you
he
tell?
Plays one on TV.
Why didn't he mention it?
No, just because I don't know. I know so many because Brazilians. So many common Brazilian names are unpronounceable to Americans. They don't get mad. They just go by an American name that Americans can pronounce.
No, that's
not a big deal.
That's one of the things I remember, like on my mission. Like they didn't know how to pronounce my name. They'd be like, Higidon. They'd ask for my first. Can I say your first name instead? And I'd tell them. They'd be like, Jarej. Jarej. And I'd be like, well,
I had a guy on my name.
Why would you be mad at that? Like they don't. No, like, because that's the whole thing now. They try to get pissed off on behalf of, because Dan does it too with his what Francesca or Vanessa Stavrokopoulou, because he gets really onto that guy for mispronouncing her names. She's got a weird name, man. Like it's a weird name. I had a weird name for 2 years when I was in a foreign country, and I get mad at people for not pronouncing it correctly. They act like you should go look it up. I'm like, why don't you do the emotional labor, man, and learn how to pronounce weird names?
In Mexico, they called me Janito, and that's a I don't know if that's proper, man. They changed my name up just to make it diminutive in Spanish. Hey, Janito. There was a guy on my mission. Sorry for bringing up your name here, because he was the nicest, sweetest, goodest guy. If there ever was somebody who got the award for non-contention person, it was this fella. His name was Wrigley, and he was one of our APs who actually deserved to be APs, and everybody loved when he became AP. But they couldn't say Wrigley. They said They just sit there and try to pronounce it for like a half hour. It was always
did your companions get really weird when people would ask what their first name is?
Yeah, some of them would. I know.
Yeah, like almost all of them. They'd be like, "What's your name?" They'd say, "Elder Allen." And be like,
"It's
yeah, but
Elder."
like, what's your real name? Elder. But like your first name, Elder. And they go to me, they're like, "Are you a douchebag or what's your first name?" I say, "Jared." My companion to look at me like I'm a dick somehow. I'm like, why don't you, like, if you want to sell your religion, be like fucking halfway approachable, man.
Yeah, it's funny thinking about it. So Sunday, I sat and watched with my family that documentary about Finnish missionaries, where some guy had access to actually be with the Finnish missionaries when they got their calls during their mission, filming them in Finland, and then filming them after their mission. And my older brother went on his mission to Finland, and it's one of the reasons I went on a mission is because he had such a hell of a time. Halfway through it, I felt all guilty and like, oh man, I better go or something like that.
I reset my thing trying to get a better connection, but I don't know if it's working.
All right, we'll see. Just wants to be friends. Flip just wants to be friends. Jared's a secular witch, and I'm Captain Contention. Now you can see missionary full name in your ward's LDS tools. Wow, you can just look it up. So watching that documentary really kind of stunk because my brother, I know he had a hell of a mission in Finland. He got freaking frostbite on his ear and part of his toe and lost part of him and had to be up. He was in this area called Kemi, which is basically the North Pole, and just had to be out where people wouldn't talk to him at all day. But the way that's filmed, like they don't show the grind. It just, you know, you were in I'm sure California is the same too a little bit, but even like in Brazil, like you could see somebody who had been out there for a year and a half. You could look at their clothes, you could look at their face, you could look at their shoes. You'd be like, this guy's withered down and just ran down. Those Finnish guys, they just looked like they'd just been sitting in a room the whole 2 years and their clothes were as pristine as the day that they arrived. But I know that Finland's a grind. Like it just, the whole thing seemed like, hey, we went on a go-away camp for a week and tried to talk to 10 people and that's it. And they got to be there with them at the beginning, middle, and end. I got my dog working on a brain toy and it's making a bunch of noise back there, but at least he's not trying to hump me. So all the stuff. We had General Conference. Sweet googly. You guys didn't follow much of General Conference, did you?
No, I watched that talk, the contention talk, because Jacob kept talking about it, and
yeah, I even had to like think to myself like, oh wait, it's Conference Sunday, isn't it? I
never know anymore.
You saw some money.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender.
Is that the same word? Contender, contention.
Contender. I could have been.
I could have been a contender. You know that film was about McCarthyism, right? And you went down a rabbit hole this week, Jared. Because he said I could have been a contender. I was the best boxer, but I got blacklisted, and the whole thing is like a metaphor for the McCarthyism. But I know Jared this week also went down a rabbit hole about Hollywood being always as commie as you ever knew, and there's a whole lot of stuff inside of that. Like look up Razor Fist videos on that, or you can look up Hans Hermann Hoppe or some other people, Democracy, the God That Failed, some books about Hollywood was always super commie. But I always love, and referred to, and we pulled up many times on this channel, Hail Caesar by the Coen brothers, which is just a beautiful little insight to what that whole thing is. This was the first time in the last 6 years since I left the church that I didn't pay attention to sing. Really? You win. Like, you win.
Yeah.
He didn't pay attention to
it. Only took 6 years for you to not bother with conference.
I stopped paying attention.
Most people go longer.
Kind of feels like I leveled up as an heck yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't listen to any conference. I listened to all the ex-Mormons comment on it. I listened to Nemo's daily things, or every single one of them. I listened to RFM's coverage, both right after the thing by himself and together with Bill Real later. And then I just barely got done listening to DeLynn and Sam just right now tell us about what Jesus really thinks. You believe that? They got into that.
Jesus thinks you should get divorced and fuck everybody.
Basically. Miss Connie watched every dang minute of every session and all of Nemo's commentary and just watched Sam rant on Mormon stories about it all. I need a hobby. I was there with you, except I didn't watch the real ones. I didn't watch any single one of the live ones. I only watched the commentaries. Took me years to stop hate watching.
And the thing, like, whenever I do like tune in to conference it's been more than 20 years since I've been out. And like, every time I'm like, I wonder what they're talking about now. And like a little part of me hopes that I'll tune in and I'll be like, huh. But every time it's just the same thing.
I'm going to go.
Pretty dull.
They said it was dull. Even DeLynn and them said it was one of the more boring ones, but they found stuff to complain about for sure. And I actually made a list live as DeLynn just went over it. You guys want to hear me run through the list if you want to? So they started with Holland and talked about Holland not showing up and saying that he must be dodging out of SUU and all that stuff. That's what they claim, because he's out going on dialysis for his kidney or something like that and had COVID. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
That wouldn't be very musket fire of him. Come on, Holland. Have some balls.
Did you guys hear about the modesty on the beach story?
No.
What's that new apostle's name? I barely know him. He came in after my time Gong, the Japanese one who doesn't count as a minority. He said some guy got ministered to because he saw a girl in modest dress on the beach, and he went up to her and said, "Why are you dressed so modest when you're like the prettiest girl here?" I think is what he said. And he said, "Because I'm Mormon. You want to go to church?" And that's when he went to church and he got baptized. And,
show me your tits. No, take some Jesus instead. Okay.
Garrett Gong. Yeah. That's the guy who has like the gay son who made a big deal of dialysis is basically hospice. That's true unless you have whatchamacallit, the diabetes. The diabetes. I got the diabetes. That guy was in a Mormon movie.
Charles mentioned, I suspect DeLynn is very troubled and upset that they didn't grovel and apologize to the world about their SEC shenanigans. And the only addendum I'll add to that is that he's acting troubled and upset. He doesn't expect them to apologize for anything. In fact, he probably doesn't want them to, because once they apologize, that's what he's been calling for. Then there's what's left for him to call for, you know? He'd have to move on to some other grift.
Yeah. So anyway, of course, Sam was extremely upset that was harassment on the beach and that was sex, drawing attention to that stuff, and they shouldn't do that. Then
I mean, it's creepy. It's weird to walk up to a chick like, why aren't you dressed more skanky? Like, that's weird. But then they turn it into this story where instead he finds Jesus, is what it sounds like.
Well, guess how many minutes it took them to start calling Uchtdorf hot? It wasn't even 2 minutes later.
Ex-Mormons have this stupid fantasy that Uchtdorf is secretly like this they've had it the whole time I've been out. There's always a speculation on ex-Mormon subreddit. In fact, I think he did the whole stay in the boat. Or no, he did the doubt your doubts. And when he did the doubt your doubts talk, they're like, I don't understand. I thought he was one of us. Like, you're stupid for thinking that. I don't know what else to tell you.
They talked about the truth, always been the truth, and not being like a comic book. They compared it to a comic book. I forgot exactly what that was. But then again, they talk about how all the women always get judged for looks. But then, of course, they talk about how all these old men look like old and sapped of zest and looking terrible and all that stuff, right?
White.
So then they talked about, so Brad Wilcox and Corbett got released, and everybody was like, "Yay!" That's the guy who did the supposedly racist talk like a year ago.
What were they? What position did they hold? Were they 70s?
They were
or
not
something?
released. They were put back in. It was just one of those things where they're released to get put back in another higher up job. Corbett got moved to 70, and Wilcox got moved up in the presidency, and so then everybody like lost their minds over that. Then, there was a part where they were talking about those guys, and Gerardo said that they try not to be political. I hadn't heard Gerardo try to claim that before, but then they talk about the audit, and they said that was the most Orwellian thing. But the audit did just skip right the hell over.
Do you think they believe that? Like they do believe that, don't they? They actually believe that they try not to be political.
Yeah, they seem like they.
No, that I mean,
I think they actually believe that.
Yeah,
this is the thing is like they don't have the words for it because they didn't go to linguist college like Dan. But when Dan says like I have no bias because all of my opinions are fact based, he's saying out loud what Gerardo and Larson and DeLynn believe. Like
even better.
I want to go in. I meant to go into this for like a little bit here, but let's learn a little bit of Foucault. And I've been wanting to talk about this, that they don't understand that they're not neutral, that they're in an episteme.
Damn it.
Which the episteme.
Chinese out on me.
The Chinese out on you.
Is he weird for you, Jared?
No.
Is everybody weird?
You're both fine for me.
Everybody's fine for me too. I think it's your thing. Episteme under Michel Foucault and this
God damn it.
postmodern thing. Episteme is talking about just like the epic of the time. Now the problem with Foucault is he thought that all there ever was epistemes, which is just power knowledge times, which the power class, the regime that's in power are the ones who set truth, and they give you all these like the order of things in a specialized sense to mean historically non-temporal a priori knowledge that grounds truth in discourses, thus representing the condition of their possibility within a particular epoch. In any given culture and at any given moment, there is always only one episteme that defines the conditions of possibility of all knowledge, whether expressed in theory or silently invested in a practice. And the reason I hate the postmodernists is because they think that that's all there is. But I do think that that this concept is true as far as like the regime has their episteme. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean that all knowledge is just at that point right here, but it's kind of like this fancy word for saying the Overton window, but the Overton windows, it's deeper than that. It's like all your a priori assumptions, all of your assumptions and all your starting points and all your ending points are all uniform inside what Curtis Yarvin calls like the cathedral or something like that. And so much of what DeLynn and Dan McClellan, even a little bit the Mormons on the Mormon side, they have all these neoliberal assumptions and landing points and starting points and end points and midpoints that they think is neutral. And it's not neutral. It's nowhere near neutral whatsoever. It is 100% a political ideology. It's a political ideology starting point and ending point. And
McClellan knows that.
McClellan does know
He
that.
does. The rest of them kind of fall for this. One of my favorite traps that they have is the whole. This literally.
This is all screwed up my internet wise. I'm gonna drop out and try to. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, try to boot back in or something, or try a cell phone even. So. Go ahead. What you're saying about McClellan?
This is ridiculous.
They do that thing.
I'm gonna drop.
Where anytime you bring up, like I don't know, anything socially political, like trans stuff, it's always like, this literally isn't political. This is about human life, not your hypothetical politics. What a position of privilege you do these stupid hypotheticals from or whatever. And I think it really gets into people's minds.
Yeah, it totally does. And so they have these assumptions, like their assumptions about when they're talking about critical theory. And I'm just going to advertise this podcast, not go through it right now. But Short Fat Taco did a really good video on Gramsci to the present on what critical theory is. capital C, critical theory, and how critical theory is different than critical thinking. And I think everybody's got to get these two things sorted out. We got to get these things sorted out completely, because they're two different things entirely. And being critical, you can be critical. I mean, you can get in your head about maybe I'm being overcritical. There's a problem with just being constantly critical. But there's a difference between empirically skeptical, and critical theory, which is this just. And I mean, I saw it a million times, and not 100% of the conference commentary was this, but most of it was. It's this sniveling critical theory. Make sure you find fault with everything. Delenn and them even got a little bit they got a little bit self-aware about it. But anyway, Short Fat Taco did a great video on this, starting with from Antonio Gramsci, who's the guy who said, we got to call into question everything about any status quo. And, well, he goes over a lot of the ways leftists throw sand in the eyes, saying that, oh, it wasn't this, they weren't trying to do that, even though then they'll pee right in your face and say, yeah, but that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we've always been trying to do. And yes, he did say that. You got to stop and ask yourself why they're always throwing sand in the eyes. But it goes through how that the stuff that started with Gramsci, which is basically the cultural Marxism, which is basically just learn how to criticize everything to soften the status quo and bring about revolution, and how that led up through the Frankfurt School, and it led up through postmodern stuff, the stuff that Jared and I covered with Jonathan Streeter, all the way up to the present day of what is Peterson called the postmodern neo-Marxist, which is more of a genealogical marriage of how those guys use those tools to get to this level of just, we can just criticize the crap out of anything in the status quo, and what's on the other end of it? Why utopia is. But this video also goes deep into like how some of the sand thrown in the eyes about all this stuff too. It's a really good video, because this is the stuff we've been talking about, but he did a great job of putting it in like one good solid hour. And
I haven't seen it yet.
And everybody's got to sort out what critical theory is from critical thinking. Critical theory, critical thinking are two different things, and we even need to sort out.
Shame. It's like a terrible shame that they have to use that word.
Yeah.
I mean, ex-Mormons already ruined critical thinking enough, because all they thought that critical thinking is just like, I believe in science, saying shit like that. But
can you just imagine Wilcox in the High Council room getting worked up into a fever and gave that speech? Leslie says there was a women's group on Mormon discussion that was making fun of an apostle's teeth. Yeah, they get into this. This is one of the things, because this. Did you hear the talk on contention? Well, I'm working up to that, because that's kind of
I watched it today. It was the only one I've seen.
So much of the general idea of what I want to talk about, and I know you've been here all along for it, is critical contention, criticize, critical. Of course, that became a big deal on Jacob Hansen's channel and all that sort of stuff, because he took to heart where people tried to say, you can't be contentious, which of course John Lynn took it and said, you can't be contentious. And everything is about, well, are we being contentious? Marty's even kind of like challenged us with it, but there's some sort of level of, are you being contentious? Or what I think is game theory. In game theory, optimal game theory is, if somebody kicks you in the dick, you kick in the dick back and then forgive. That's optimal game theory. Like, you don't just sit there and take it.
Well, he even mentioned, that's the part they leave out of that talk, is he said, and I don't mean peace at all cost.
Yeah.
Which I wish you would have expanded on that, because I don't think Mormons really need to hear don't be contentious, because they're uncontentious to a fault. It's like their worst quality. So I think what Mormons need to hear more of is the whole the peace at any cost part of that, where he's like, look, you got to stand up for yourself sometimes.
Yeah, and usually what some of these Mormons or ex-Mormons are the ones who are being critical theorists, not just critical, because I think it's fine. It's great to be critical, like a critical thinker, or somebody who's just checking to see if it works for your life or not, or if something makes freaking sense. You know what I mean? But if it edges into the world of critical theory, if we've got to take this down to bring in some new idealized utopia of ideas.
Well, there's a significant difference in like the brain power that it takes to be a critical thinker versus having critical consciousness. Because being a critical thinker is like, to me, it kind of means that you have to have like legitimate, hard-hitting criticisms, things that are very thoughtful, right? But to have critical consciousness, I feel like any sentence that starts with, well, what really even is bleh, is just critical consciousness. It's like, well, who's to say that slavery is immoral? And then you just deconstruct down to absurdity. There was this, Adam and Sitch covered this great debate, and I've never really listened to this guy before, that whatever Jung guy, P.F. Jung or whatever, I don't remember his name, but he was arguing with Vosh, and like Vosh was like, well, what do you mean by evil? He was trying to get him to say, he's like, do I really need to define that? Because right now we're talking about the Holocaust, right? And I feel like what I'm saying is that gassing Jews in the Holocaust is evil. Are you being serious? Do you actually want me to explain that? I feel like it's just self-evident, and I shouldn't need to explain it. And that's the point where I throw my hands in the air so often at this kind of bullshit, is the whole reaction of, you know what they mean. You absolutely know, like, of course it's evil. Like, this should be just an assumption we both operate on, even as interlocutors in a debate, because, like, how are we going to get anywhere? And that's part of the thing with Vosh. He doesn't want to get anywhere. He just wants to, because the deconstruction game, it makes you look smart to people who don't know how goddamn easy it is.
Yeah, challenge your epistemic authority, say you can't have it, then call you some sort of like racist or bigot or homophobe. But part of what the deal is too is like, they're saying you can't defend or be contentious, but there's something to be turning the other cheek. But when you're in a system of critical theory, which the idea of critical theory is reboot the critique every second, like that's part of what that dialectic is that here's the criticism, well, here's the answer, here's the criticism, here's the answer, here's the we don't end with the criticism. That at some point you have to stop and stand up to it and say, hey, no, knock it off. James Lindsay always points to the thing, that comic where there's like a feminist shoveling shit into the wall, into the internet, just saying, shoveling the shit, and then somebody shovels the shit back and they go, oh, oppression. And that's so much of what you see going on. But it's got to be parsed out, because I for sure am not saying you can't be critical, or critical of the church. I mean, all we do is, this is just being critical. All we're doing is being critical and contentious. Like the whole entire freaking contentious thing, like everybody suddenly jumped on the thing. I see it all the time. Like everybody says, they always point to Brad Whitbeck from the Midnight Mornings. Like, I'm Brad Whitbeck. No, I'm Brad Whitbeck. Like, I'm Brad. Like, y'all, none of y'all are Brad Whitbeck. Like, Brad Whitbeck is only the one who's actually being nice. And the rest of you are contentious douches, just like us. And just own it and live with it and stop trying to pretend like the second you get pious about the stuff is the second I lose my mind. Like, but
no, you never watched Avatar, right? Like the Last Airbender.
The Last Airbender, yeah, I did.
Oh, you did?
The cartoon or the movie?
Yeah,
well, I watched both. Yeah.
So I feel like one of everyone's favorite character of all time is Uncle Iroh, and that's what I think of when I think not to be contentious, because and that's a balance I probably ought to strike better in my own life. But Uncle Iroh is this. He is very non-contentious. Like Zuko is constantly, being really shitty toward him and being very ungrateful. But he doesn't. He does turn the other cheek often. But there comes a point when he can't turn the other cheek, and part of that is in who he's dealing with. And right, he's dealing with Zuko for the most part, and he knows if I turn the other cheek repeatedly, I'm pretty sure this person will turn shit around. But when it's against other people, when it's against actual enemies that wish him harm, like he's a badass and he starts kicking the shit out of everyone.
Yeah, totally. Everything's this. I mean, that's the concept of game theory. It's all the situation. Like the situation calls for it not, and you're supposed to be an agent and actor in this world dealing with it. And some of the times the answer to that is to be contentious and maybe you got to even punch first sometimes or something like that. But I kind of like the Cobra Kai series for that, because it's kind of like this endless battle of like, what do you do, the Daniel San way or the Cobra Kai way? And the Cobra Kai way is punch first, and the Daniel San way is never punch first. And they're kind of these kids kind of going back and forth between, no, well, we got to learn this. No, we got to learn this. Well, let's blend them both together or something like that. But I think all this contention stuff and everybody just suddenly jumping on like, haha, you shouldn't be contentious. That's why I put my name as Captain Contention. Like, screw you, all the contention, because all suddenly Russell M. Nelson's suddenly pontificating on it. But let's see, John, of course, after they talked about the SEC thing and them avoiding the SEC thing, John says, boy, this would just have been a great opportunity for the church to show how to do a masterclass in apologizing, how to.
And I'm rooting for the church. I am. I want the church to succeed and do well and be LGBTQI plus inclusive. He always does that stupid disclosure. It's like, actually, I love the church.
It's a missed opportunity for them to show how to do repentance. Shut up, Delin. Then they talked about get the patriarchal blessing young was one of the bills that came up, so that you have time to like foretell the future a bit better. And then they got into the contention thing, and John, if he had any sort of saying what sort of talk you'd given John DeLynn, if he had any sort of talk of what sort of talk you'd give in conference, he would for sure say, we need to have a talk about decreasing polarization. We need to have a decreasing polarization against all these right wingers.
Oh my God. Do you think Mormons are polarizing? Like, are Mormons figures that intentionally polarize things? Who polarizes more people against each other? Mormons or Mormon stories? I mean, I feel like the answer is just goddamn obvious. Because Mormons are all like, ew, yeah, we don't agree with them, but be nice to them. Mormon stories is like, no, have the right opinions or else.
Yeah, I mean, because Mormons honor the Constitution and tolerance is built into the Constitution, Mormons are tolerant. Tolerance is not built into wokeness. In fact, tolerance is an enemy to wokeness.
Yeah, and so then, of course, Sam went into like a half an hour long rant, which that one might be worth just sitting and going through, although this was live still while I was going on, so it's hard to pull up the stuff. But she said, oh, I could give them a masterclass on how they need to widen and their biases and stop treating some people like they aren't worth compassion, and what they need to be kinder, challenging how you impose your worldviews and the views of certain people. You view certain people as less deserving of compassion. I mean, it was just a straight up projection rant for a half an hour.
Because that's things like, I mean,
so often view like a parent bringing their kid to church and telling them this is the truth as being like forcing your worldview on. So, oh, parents do that. What are you going to do? Are you just going to tell your kid, I don't really know anything. Just figure it out.
Yeah, and the same people that are right now complaining about, oh, they don't have compassion, are the same people who bitch when they say hate the sinner or hate the sin, not the sinner. That's that's things like they keep stressing it. I was like, look, we're not saying these people are bad. We say that these people deserve all the love that God affords all his children. That's the message. There's always some that's things like, and we know that you know that because we've heard you all shitting on them for saying that, and now you're turning around and saying like, oh, they have no compassion. Like, no, that's you. You're the one with no compassion.
Well, so there's always some snarky ex-Mormon in the comment section when you bring up the hate the sin, love the sinner thing, and they think they're being really clever when they turn it back around on the Mormons and say, hate the religion, love the religious. Yeah, that's exactly the idea. They're just saying get along with people you disagree with. That's the whole point of it. Like, you disagree with the idea, you don't disagree with the person. That's the point. You just realized it and you think it's a dunk on them. No, they have this great idea that you agree with.
Have you ever noticed that there's an almost perfect overlap with the people on social media who shit on thoughts and prayers after a tragedy? And those same people are the same people who will change their profile picture with an overlay of a flag or a little circle that say,
I circle.
Stand by. It's like, no, you're doing the same thing, stupid. Like, your stupid France flag is the exact same thing as thoughts and prayers. It works the same way. It does the same thing. It's the same signaling. Like, get over yourself.
Was the France flag one the first one you can remember?
That's pretty early. There was that.
I don't remember any before it.
The jerking it guy. The very first slacktivism thing I remember is the Coney thing. That's
Yeah.
the first one where everybody changed their
2012.
profile pictures and put it out and said something about it. And
Yeah,
we're going to
and I
get
feel
together
like-
and use social media to make a
Yeah.
change about a random thing. And then
Well,
South Park covered
that
it
was
and
the-
jacking it. Yeah.
That was the
song is so
witch thing we listened to, where she's talking about witchcraft.
Yeah,
and-
that's coming.
Did I miss the witch stuff? Oh,
It's coming.
No, we haven't talked
We're gonna
about
do
it
witch
yet.
most of the time.
All right, I'll get to
my
it.
internet is way better.
Well,
now,
we're
by
almost
the way.
there. So, Flip, did you
I'll
hear Andy?
wait.
Because we started talking about this of Nelson's talk on contention and not being contentious.
No, I just heard people talking about it. I made one comment on the thoughtful saints, and that's everything I know about. Is other than that, is people talking about it.
So, I mean, I guess I won't pull it up here and go into it, but just like it's said here by Ms. Connie and by Chris from Before the Crow's Nest, is that it was a long rant, and it was just, I mean, it was almost peak projection, although it's always peak projection with them. And Delin even noticed and had some self-awareness of saying they can't make you guys happy because as soon as they're talking about musket fire, you guys are losing your minds. And then as soon as they're talking about not being contentious, you guys are losing your minds. But
Yeah.
Delin, I know there's Delin knows the bullcrap he's pulling to when he's sitting there talking like that stuff. Ms. Connie, I enjoyed Nemo telling her she was going to lose her British card for showing too much emotion. I mean, she got into stuff of saying he needs to challenge some narratives, and he's talking to us and to the ultra right. That's who he's talking to, because they're imagining that in their head. And then they keep bringing up this thing of like Buddhism. She says Buddhism has this all in it. It has all baked in. It's like she's some missionary or preacher for Buddhism all the time. It says hypocrisy and complete lack of awareness. I shouldn't have a better take than him because I'm young. And then they kept talking about Corbett saying, well, this guy owes to activism the fact that he even has this position at all here. And to me, that kind of comes across as you owe it to us, because you guys were the activists. All right. You owe to us your position, stay on the plantation.
Is Corbett like a minority or something?
Corbett's the black guy who gave that speech about activism against the church.
Oh, yeah.
And they say and predict that he's going to be the next apostle because he got moved into a 70 position. And they're going to move into apostle position. And then John Dehlin, of course, said, now, guys, I don't want to say that this will be bad because we're hoping for them to be more diverse. But isn't it kind of a tokenization that they're going to do this?
Yeah, man, that's what all of it is.
I think I just found like a Dehlin. It's like you kind of like add some Gomer Pyle to it. Like, the guys, there's something where couldn't there be some tokenization that gets added in here in this situation?
Well, gee, Kara, isn't that tokenization?
Gee, Kara, isn't that tokenization? Oh, gee.
I'm sorry, John, did you did not hire a female co-host just to talk over her, did you?
Everybody's getting mad at me because I defend the church so much. It's what I do it. I do it to a fault. I'm so bad. I'm always defending the church. Sorry, guys.
You're just too fair, John.
Yeah, and also I mean, did you guys not think about this where you have put the church in a trap? Because there has to be a first black apostle or no black apostles.
Yeah. It's sad. It's problematic. It's problematic.
It's that you just reminded me, I think it was in that there was one New York Times article that mentioned that when a bunch of white people leave a neighborhood, that's white flight and that's racist, and when a bunch of people come into a neighborhood, that's gentrification and that's racist. Yeah. And if a bunch of white people stay where they live, they're living on indigenous land, and that's racist.
You had that meme, Jared. There's one of movies. A white guy shoots a black person, that's racist. A black guy shoots a white person, that's racist. A white guy shoots a white person, that's racist. A black guy shoots a black person, that's racist. But that's critical theory. We're back to critical theory.
You start with the assumption of this is racist, and you can justify anything when you start with your assumption.
That's I think
I'm a decent enough mental gymnast.
This is a critical thing that what makes us different as ex-Mormons from woke ex-Mormonism is that we're willing to cut the church the slack they deserve, because we can do that. Our worldview isn't contingent upon Mormonism being bad all of the time for everything. But Dehlin and crew, they need the church to be shit. They need it.
It's gonna be kind of like an interesting thing as soon as we get to the witch one, because there's a witchcraft episode coming up, and she's a pragmatic witch. So it's like she could make all like the Jordan Peterson pragmatism arguments for witchcraft. And
she says nothing about witchcraft that a Christian couldn't affirm.
Yeah. Surrender your children to a radical revolutionary worldview. Nothing bad will happen. From Hawkish Owl.
Yeah.
This is like, hold
you
on,
always say, Peterson's Christianity is such that like he doesn't say anything about religion or the Bible that we as atheists can't affirm.
Yeah, well, it's 100% something that evolutionary psych guys have watched and mapped out a little bit. You got what's his name, David Sloan Wilson, Jeffrey Miller, and I've pointed out before, these are all atheists, and they're atheist kind of anthropologists who go and review this stuff, and they're looking, because sometimes when I'm talking pragmatics, it maybe sounds like I'm talking about the pomo trad thing, that you should go pretend that you're some sort of religious thing because that's gonna, I don't know what. There's a lot of theory behind that. I'm actually just looking at it descriptively, not prescriptively. I mean, descriptively it works. I'm not saying prescriptively you got to go do that.
Yeah.
Let's see here. First one I really remember was blackout profile picture. Yeah, that one. The craziest moment, and this is true, was asking Gay Geraldo his feeling about the church's token.
There's some recursion going on.
She straight says like, well, I wanted to ask you, Geraldo. I wanted to.
Now we know what it looks like. Jared got to find out what it feels like to stare into infinity.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Geraldo. Okay, if you think those guys were being really bigoted, you think they're being pretty bigoted towards you, okay?
It's like asking Token, be like, hey, hey Token, isn't this tokenization token?
Okay. I didn't add the MK until Troy said it there, but yeah. Correction.
The church is bad.
Latinx.
Most experts agree the society will run out of things to call racist by 2024. That's already done gone happen. Did you see today that they have this like whole letter at the front of Gone with the Wind book that they wrote now decrying its racism? When they published the book, and it's got a letter in the whole beginning of it that has to decry the racism in Gone with the Wind before you read the book. Finally, you guys on this podcast saved my sanity. I needed that middle ground between the church and Delinism. Yeah. We're here going crazy with you, and we can all be solidarity and losing our freaking minds.
Join the brotherhood.
So that whole contention thing, and I think so. Jacob Hansen on his Facebook page kind of started getting into it with a bunch of other different guys because he came out saying, like, I don't think you understood the talk entirely, because the contention doesn't mean don't stand up for yourself or don't stand up for certain things. It means kind of just don't, and ideas over people, which we hear DeLynn say all the time and fail horribly at.
Well, it makes all the Mormons think that anytime there is conflict, it's because I'm wrong. That's kind of how those thoughtful faith guys are interpreting it. And Jacob is right. He's trying to explain to them that's not the case. And Nilsson, like I said, he even mentioned in his talk, he said, I am not talking about peace at all costs. Right?
Yeah.
Should have expounded on that more. He didn't. I don't expect.
There's definitely that kind of like, I experienced it in the church where like there's some Mormons that like, if there's any bad feelings at all, that's contention. We need to put a stop on this right now. It's like, no. Sometimes you got to face. Sometimes your emotional reactions is your conscience telling you that you've got to adjust your worldview. And that's okay. You should teach people how to cope with that, not to avoid it.
Yeah. Also, as I talked about in the game theory stuff, sometimes dickhead is the right answer.
For sure.
It means don't make a video series about Julie Haynes specifically, probably allegedly. He also like called for the firing of Sherry Dew, and then he got into it with Jackson Washburn a little bit, and Jackson Washburn
I saw that
regurgitating some Ibermex candy to him, which that's the future of the church.
I will say, Jacob, you're probably more contentious than what Russell M. Nelson would want you to be, but you're probably less contentious than what I would want you to be. So
when I pointed out that short-sighted taco video, and you read through it and you learn that the Gramscian idea that plays all the way through, and if people doubt any of it, go listen to like a recent discussion between Glenn Greenwald and Judith Butler, and who was that? The other guy, the guy who's the guy with the tall gray hair who was always on Bill Maher, the black dude who's always what's his name? they all talked about Brother Gramsci and how Brother Gramsci started this all, just right there on that stinking podcast.
Oh Lord.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, the whole thing is, how do we subvert the institutions? How do we challenge the status quo and subvert the institutions? And that's what they've been doing for 100 freaking years.
Yeah.
And part of what freaks me out is I didn't love the Mormon institutions. I got away from them. But I will especially not love the Mormon institutions then subverted and worn like a zombie outfit by the critical theorists. That is the monster that I'm afraid of most in this world.
Yeah. No, I would go back to church just to fight those people and get thrown out all over again if that's what it took. I would happily get re-excommunicated from woke Mormonism after having been excommunicated from regular Mormon classic.
It's a time for strange bedfellows.
Yeah. I got to mention, though, because Jackson blocked me. Like, I think I interacted with Jackson for like 30 minutes on Facebook. And I used cancer in an analogy.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, "My dad died of cancer, you insensitive dickhead." And blocked me. I'm like, okay, so no one can mention cancer. Because I didn't know. And also, it's an analogy. Mister, I'm in a PhD program. You don't know?
That's a contentious thing, Clip.
I was contentious.
He had to fight hard to get into that. There was, for every one person that doesn't get in that, there's one person that does. So.
Oh, hey, Jared, real quick. Did you ever get to that mezcal?
No, I went to another one that was in Orem, and like their top shelf shit was like your bottom shelf shit.
Yeah. No, that's yeah. All right.
That's why the church needs to embrace Scalzonite building blocks before the woke infiltrate. This you guys are learning now what is Nick Land neo-reactionary. He went all the way through Marxism, all the way back through, or all the way around to right-wing neo-reactionary stuff. Now you're getting it. You might need to do that, Flip, with the new Young Women's President, Emily Bell Freeman is quite woke. Oh boy,
that's unfortunate. That's happening everywhere, though. I don't know if I told you that my sister called me. She lives in Livermore, California, and she wanted to ask me. She's like, "What do you know about like these like non-binary shit?" And I was like, "I don't know. Do you have a few hours to talk?" And she's in Young Women's, and one of the young women wanted to be called they, and her Young Women's president told her, and we have to respect that. Not being contentious, because that's the moment to be a little bit contentious and say, no, that's not a fucking thing, kid. Go to counseling. No, don't go to counseling. They'll tell you it's right. So my sister's like, and so I finally went and I looked up, I researched some stuff on it, and I said, yeah, this is pretty bad.
Troy, it won't be undercover. Like,
is Flip suggesting an undercover atheist mission to defend Mormon orthodoxy? And once again, that concept is what the stuff I've pulled up here and shown you. That's what Curtis Yarvin is. That's what the Mencius Moldbug thing is. That's what the post-mo trad movement is that I've been suggesting and people look at.
They're undercover
for years. They're kind of out in the open, but it's completely, they call themselves pomo trad. You see it a little bit with these trad wives things. And it's this whole thing that they realize they are postmodern beings, that it's all been obliterated. They know it's fake, but they're going to go do it because we need to save society because of this, which in the same way, the witch we're going to talk about is doing pomo witchery.
Oh, absolutely.
Those guys do pomo trad stuff. And we're in this whole postmodern moment where everybody's self-aware that they're lying to themselves, but acting out these wackadoo things, right? That's what's coming up.
I just rewatched the Die Hippie Die episode of South Park, and it's so brilliant because, like, the first time I watched it, I didn't really know that much, but like, because the part they really nailed down is that communist thing that communists don't know how. Communism has no plan, and like that really hits home in that episode. But like, in that episode, those are true believers. They're not pomo anything. They're just people who bought into it. But well, like, we fast forward and we're all the way to where you're saying like they're like, that's funny, pomo trad.
But I kind of went. So yeah,
if they get called to the bishopric, does that mean they have to like wield their power? I mean, that's like you'd
have to pretend, right? And
like,
how much
as soon as you get into a position of authority, you've got an ethical crisis on your hands.
I think I really lack the ability to pretend these things. I talk about this. I listen to this witch talk, and she's like, obviously I don't believe in magic, but I do in that, like, life is just magical. It's like, yeah, but you know what they mean when they say magic.
Yeah.
Witches, real witches. They think they're actually casting actual spells.
So it becomes,
you know, that, like, they're not just talking about the magic of existence.
It becomes an almost kind of like fake it until you make it type thing. And the whole entire thing is to kind of have this base trad pre-modern front, almost like a political block. And also, in a way, I mean, in my view, it's a little bit Dan McClellan-y, because I think Dan McClellan is completely like infiltrating a church to put his politics into it as much as he can, use it in that way. In a way, it's kind of the weird right-wing reaction to that and doing the same thing. It's why I can't do that. Like, Troy's joking about it. You're joking about it. We're not like actually doing it. We're not actually marching in saying, hey, we're the non-believing but right-wingers here to save your church, and we're going to do that by becoming your apostles for you. We're going to do it from the outside. We're not going to go lie about,
I'm convinced here at this point. Yeah. If Dan got a job that relocated him to Texas, he would leave the church inside of 12 months. Like, I really believe that. Like, Dan is Mormon as far as he sees it supporting his political ambitions while he lives in Harriman.
Yeah, he's a utilitarian.
And I think that if he left, if he left Harriman and went somewhere else where Mormons weren't popular, that he wouldn't do it instantly, but he would drift away and then be, oh, that was that, and then he would, rhetorical prophylaxis his way into explaining it all without grinding his gears too hard.
Yeah. Well, there's something about any galaxy brain, whether right wing or left wing, who thinks they're going to go infiltrate a thing to steer it because they're the sneaky ones who are Machiavellians inside of it, who know the things that we're going to.
Who was the guy with the quote you told me about? Is that somebody said that like all of the graves in DC are filled with people who are going to change things from the inside, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually my dad told me that quote. From the. He told me that right when Trump got elected, actually. But the other end of that too is this goes back forever. If you read what Nietzsche says about Thomas Carlyle, and Thomas Carlyle is who Mencius Moldbug kind of idolizes. Nietzsche talks about Thomas Carlyle and says Thomas Carlyle is so mad that he doesn't really believe. Like, he wishes he believed, and he's so mad that he doesn't. But he's trying to hold on to these traditions with that sort of thing.
Just rings the bell of way back when Hitchens used to say all the time, used to bring that thing up where he talks to people who said, I wish I could believe, and Hitchens always said, like, I can't do that. And that's making more and more sense the older I get, because I never had that. Like, I never wished to believe. I just did until I didn't anymore, But like, I'm understanding more and more that desire of like, God, I wish this was true, because then I wouldn't have to think so hard.
I know it kind of hit me, the whole pragmatic belief, because we talk about this a lot. The like things that are metaphorically true and stuff. The Brett Weinstein thing that he talks about, how porcupines can throw their quills, but they can't really. But you thinking that was a valuable thing, so maybe it was kind of true in that way. And I'm like, I can't. Like, my brain just doesn't work that way. I can't do that. I can't think that, like, porcupines can throw their quills. Like, I can treat them as if they could, because that makes me steer clear of it. I understand the utility. But what really got me was, and I wasn't here for this last week, but that shrooms episode of Mormon Stories, when she's talking about how she did shrooms, stopped believing, and left her husband and children within 4 months.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ.
And then she started walking around with the single mother label. That's another one that pisses me off. Like,
when you walk away from single mother,
when you walk away from a loving marriage, you don't get to say I'm a single mom. You just don't.
Yeah,
that's stolen valor.
So I'm like, oh yeah, you just need to believe pragmatically. And like, far be it for me to be like the arbiter of who should pragmatically believe and who can handle leaving. And I'm not going to pretend that I can distinguish that. But when I see a woman who's in, and every time he brought up like, well, were you happy? He's like, oh yeah, I loved it. I loved the church. I love being a mom, all this stuff. And then she's like, but then I did shrooms and I stopped believing. And just totally destroyed my kid's childhood over a needless divorce. Wow.
You know, and what I wondered though, as because last week with Marty, when she talks about having aphantasia, which is interesting because I've never actually talked to somebody who knew that they had that, but their inability to picture things. Because I remember when I was a kid, I learned about this idea about like, you know, some people cannot close their eyes, and like if you ask them to like visualize a horse, now turn it upside down, you know, like I did that with my eyes open just now. And I brought up last week about when I was a kid, I was always confused when I would sleep over with my cousins, and they're like, "Okay, we're going to sleep," and 5 minutes later they were snoring, and I'm like, "How the fuck do you do that?"
Yeah.
And they say, "We just stop thinking." And I really wonder, like, you know, is there something like when it comes to this religious stuff, and can you be a pomo trad? Is there some connection with how certain brains are? Because like I'm like you, Jared, where like once the cat's out of the bag, like I can say we're pretending the cat's in the bag. But
you just can't go back to the thing of not saying the pretending part.
Yeah.
You have to keep
like,
you have to have the observer.
Yeah.
The observer's always got to be there. And that's the postmodern condition. The observer of you in there. But you have to also realize that something's lost there. Like I saw somebody talked about, like, you will never get to experience what it's like meeting some Tibetan monk in Tibet in a mountain and thinking it's as magical as it is. You can't get to experience that because no matter what, you will be the Yeah, but what I'm saying is you won't experience it as not a postmodern person. You won't experience it as a person not just aware of the skeptical you observing it. That's going to be there. You can't breast out of it now.
My buddy is a practicing Buddhist, and he went to Nepal. And like he told me about, like, you know, there's this place where there's an impression in the rock that's a hand impression, and like all this magical stuff. And I'm like, no, it's a depression in the rock. Like,
you can't escape it.
Like, but he's just like, no, like no matter who puts their hand in there, it fits perfectly. And I'm just like, well, no. It's like, I mean,
but
sure,
so much
but what do you mean? Like, and I can just never escape that thing. But he's a true believer.
That Vervaeke stuff, so much of what he's doing and why we're reviewing it is he's trying to philosophically give people Plato in a way that you can maybe try to get yourself back into thinking like a pre-modern person who's only taking in the world with what's coming in right here and what's in front of you and what you're seeing, and get out of your head about everything else. But I still think that you kind of can't do it. It's gone. Like Troy says, I sometimes refer to myself as a reluctant atheist. I feel compelled into a position, but not particularly happy about it. I mean, I feel the same. I feel like the postmodern position, because this is, Forrest has talked to us about it too. Like there's a word chopping about the word postmodern. Like there's the postmodernists, a group of people who had very specific ideas from like 1968 France to like 1984 France. But then there's postmodern, small p, which is just people who started getting skeptical of how good modernity was for society and what we lost with our pre-modern thinking, because we did lose something in that weird metaphysical, magical worldview a little bit, and you can't get it back.
It reminds me of those because, like, I mean, it's been a couple of times that, like over a period of years, I've talked people out of church. And I remember when, like, my friend that I'd known for many, many years and was a Mormon the whole time of varying degrees. And then one day she told me, she's like, I don't believe the church anymore. And the first words out of my mouth was, I'm sorry. Like, and I meant it, like, because, but like,
one of the shortcuts.
Congratulations.
My words are always my word. I've had a couple of people come to me and say that now, like within the last like few months, and it's always, don't do that.
Well, one of the shortcuts, and that's I think is why people get so crazy about it.
Maybe this time the spirit will pop up.
Have you heard of Moroni's promise?
Yeah.
But one of the shortcuts we're all converting these guys back. We should go be Pomo missionaries, man, and just like walk around, put our gaffets back on. How do we call those, in plaques or whatever? And I remember this is just a random one up on our mission. We used to have like backpacks. We'd have backpacks and we'd have the plaques and we'd have our ties. And every day when we were walking out the door, we'd be like, did I forget anything? A tie, my plaque, my backpack. Nope. I got everything.
We had nothing that fun in my mission. Yeah. My mission was boring language, boring place. Like, I've always I feel like my mission was it's like I went on a mission to Sandy, but there was 1/4 as many Mormons.
I don't know if I want to go over this whole entire thing, maybe, but James Lindsay just a couple days dropped off this thing about the dialectical faith of leftism, and this is where because he's written this out before, and this is the first time I think he's spoken it out. Maybe we'll come back to it, but he goes into detail about how things get categorized as religions in the U.S. and even maybe philosophically a little bit. And I got like a little 10-minute clip there, but maybe we'll skip it right now. But
and also
the wokeism is a religion. It's a truth claim about the world. It talks about ontology, epistemology, teleology, axiology. It fits all the things that fit a religion. Maybe there's not like a God thing there, but it does aim at a divine end, and it is a religion.
And also, for people who don't know the story, that because in America, the whole what is a religion and what isn't, turns out it comes down to the IRS, and Scientology fucked it for everyone forever.
God damn it.
And if you just look up Scientology versus the IRS, there's a whole Wikipedia article on it. There's a bunch of people who've done YouTube videos on it. But there's actually and this is a real issue, is that because of what Scientology did, they opened the doors that basically all you have to do is piss and moan long enough, and you can get religious status in as far as America is concerned. Which, to me, that seems like, it'll never, ever, ever, ever happen. But that's a thing the legislature needs to fix, because it sort of fell to the IRS, but it was obviously never, founding fathers. What's the first principles? I can't think of the exact word, but what they had in mind. I don't think they ever imagined an IRS, let alone the idea that the IRS would be the arbiter in America of what is a valid religion and what isn't.
I wonder which maybe DOE. Maybe that's I'm trying to think of the
Department of Energy. Well,
yeah.
Well, because that raises the point. Because a few weeks ago, when they said the Department of Energy says that COVID was probably lab leak, I'm like, huh. My first thing was huh, and then I was like, wait, what? The nuclear power guys? How are you even in on this? How is this even your purview? What the fuck is going on that the Department of Energy is making calls on infectious disease?
Yeah,
I'm genuinely curious about that. What happened there?
There's so much overlap in government agencies. We have these tests at work every couple, every year or so.
That's right. You are a DOE guy, aren't you? Do you have the radiation equivalent of a food handler's permit?
I got a badge that my clearance is building access only. It's no clearance at all. But
it's got a dosimeter built into it, right?
We have dosimeters, but we have to determine which documents are DOE and which are DOT and which are EPA and shit like that. It's just I hate the red tape bullshit so much.
You're in Idaho and you work in radioactive stuff. Did they teach you about the the SL1 the accident that happened in Idaho where three guys died?
We talked about it a little bit, but I've mostly just watched podcasts on it.
Oh, I was gonna say that's the thing that you went and learned on your own, that they're not actually going out of their way to hammer.
Well, everybody at work thinks it's interesting, so we
I guess
at work talk about it, but it's not something they teach us about really.
I just wanted and then the other thing is because I wonder if you work there, do you end up being the asshole that goes out into the world every time somebody's worried about the microwaves, radiation and stuff? You're well, no, actually, there's alpha particles and there's beta particles, and you have to debate it, and then people get mad at you for bringing science to the table.
Well, they always ask me, they're aren't you worried that your kid's gonna have a third arm or whatever? I was no. I went to the dentist the other day and got an X-ray on my face, and that was more. I absorbed more dose in that one X-ray than I absorb all year at work. So it's
I was gonna it's possible, and it's on my bucket list, but you can take day trips to Pripyat, the city outside of Chernobyl. The radiation level is low enough that you can go spend the day there. They say, don't roll around in the dirt, don't get close to anything metal, and don't put shit in your mouth. Those are the rules about visiting Pripyat. Other than that, go nuts.
What is this, communist Russia? All right, so I wanted to point this out that
Hold on a second.
Oh,
Did your
this
brother
is so
bring back the
golden.
sauna practice? That's the question about Finland. And yes, he did. He was
Oh.
crazy for that. Yeah.
Does he? But did he do it naked? Can
They
Mormons
did
sauna naked?
because it was
Whoa.
it was just the two males together. It was like male
I
saunas
figured
and
we was
female
going
saunas.
all Scandinavian.
Man, I can't imagine that sex in a sauna, like it's already too hot and sweaty. Like you've gone beyond the hot and sweaty barrier to where like we're past it. You
Okay,
can't
so
begin
this
sex
is
at hot and sweaty. You have to get there.
This is my favorite. This might be my favorite Dan McClellan quote ever, and
This is
why
my favorite
I wanted
Chris
to.
quote.
This is why I wanted to award this week's rhetorical prophylaxis award to Before the Crow's Nest.
We need
Yeah,
a
let's say
trophy.
that the quote
What does
is
the rhetorical prophylaxis award should be like? What, like an Oscar with a condom rolled over
Something
its head?
like that. Yeah, it's got to be some like an IUD. Or, I don't know.
Can we
It's
make
gotta
a
be a Matt
3D
Damon.
printed bust of Foucault and
it's
then
a
put
Matt
a condom,
Damon.
roll a condom onto it?
Matt Damon. You get the Matt Damon this week, Christopher.
The
There
Matt
is
Damon
no-
Award goes to Christopher Schentefeld.
If you say that God made you transgender, you worship a God not known to the Judeo-Christian worldview. The God of the Bible divinely created us, male or female. We do not get to create ourselves or recreate ourselves. Dan McClellan. There is no Judeo-Christian worldview, and there is no.
Did you hear that, the West? You
and
don't
there is
exist.
no
You
single
just got
creation
erased.
of humanity in the Bible, or even a single God of the Bible. These concepts are negotiated, and the negotiation here is driven by a desire to structure power to serve right-wing authoritarian identity politics. Christopher should have. I don't know. Well, it's Before the Crow's Nest. You're out, man. You're out.
Yeah, he outed himself with his own at.
So is this concept. Dang,
Right. This is the best part. This is my favorite thing Dan has ever said, I think.
Yes, concepts are negotiated. The difference is that I'm adequately informed. I'm prioritizing the data, and I'm an MIT professor. I'm challenging rather than promoting right-wing authoritarianism and social dominant orientation.
The first part of Dan's thing, because I've listened to 1,000 hours of the Bible Geek, Bob Price, and like the first part of that is like it's Bob would flesh it out a lot more, but that's basically what Bob would say. It's like, well, look, if you're trying to get a unified view, you're not going to find it in the Bible. There is no single Judeo-Christian worldview, and there is no single God in the Bible. That's where Bob gets all the way up there, and then he fucking stops there. Where it's like, this is what the text says, this is what we can, with all of our history and all of scholarship and the Dutch radicals and the criticals, all this stuff, not the capital C criticals, but the old critics from back in the German days. Anyway, like Bob Price is like, yeah, look, if somebody's trying to claim the Bible says this about God, like, well, look, they're running into these problems. And then he stops there. But Dan is the critical theorist, capital C, capital T, who is on a mission to save the world because he believes he's a prophet. He's a wizard that can bring the new utopia into being. He takes it to that next step. And that's the big difference. And this is where this is so sneaky. Because, like, I've been in this world for long enough that, like, I heard Bob Price deconstruct the Bible for 1,000 hours before I understood anything about postmodernism and critical theory and neo-Marxism and all this other shit. So I'm lucky because everybody else, like, that might be in my position listens to Dan. He's like, well, yeah, it is hard to pin down a single God in the Bible. And what exactly do they mean by Judeo-Christian? Like, yeah. So you can easily buy into that first part. And then you swallow the rest of that bullshit, which is his power dynamics bullshit.
Deterritorializing and re-territorializing it.
No, you can stop at the analysis. As soon as you incorporate the politics, that's a guy doing church. Dan McClellan is a prophet. He's a prophet of neo-Marxist critical theory.
I live in Minnesota and introduced a bunch of LDS missionaries to the practice. Sweet suits, of course. Boo.
Well, it's easy in Minnesota because it's already shitty and cold.
Yeah, that's where you do the sauna stuff. But
it's shitty and cold and mostly white.
white supremacy.
Minnesota.
In Minnesota,
I don't know about that.
You know, in the
Don't
There's
you know that they killed George
of-
Floyd there?
There's a lot
there's
of
a
Somalians
PBS.
in Minnesota.
There's a PBS Minnesota
the
thing from like
Somalians.
the 80s or 90s called "How to Talk Minnesotan," and it's genuinely funny, and it makes me long for when PBS didn't suck.
I just watched Fargo. That's how I do
Remember
it.
those 40
Oh
years
god,
ago.
that's good stuff.
I am so honored. The problem is there is no award. It is only an ephemeral idea created by a patriarchal racist porch podcast. Nevertheless, I send my thanks and thoughts.
Thanks a lot for your. What are you praying for us? Mate, if you
Yeah.
would have lit a candle for us, that might have been something.
No, it was like Dan nailed his coffin shut with his reply.
Yeah,
like,
that was perfect. Not
like
replying
you did
to
it perfect. Like
He just
no, like
But
because also
when
not
I
only do you
asked
get
him
the
if he
rhetorical
was a
prophylaxis award,
biased,
you get
when I
the
asked him if he was
pimpiness
biased
award.
politically, I didn't need to say anything else. He just
Yeah.
said, "Nope, the data says Democrat, man." That's what
No,
data says.
because Chris, you did something that I really, really envy. Because I like words and I like using a lot of words.
Yeah,
but
I'm
I
bad
also
at less is
appreciate,
more.
Yeah, like I'm also bad at less is more. 4 words, and you just ripped the pants off of Dan McClellan's whole fucking game. And his dong is dangling in the wind. We can all see it with 4 little words. That was brilliant.
That's Christopher before the crow's nest. I'm Chris. He's Christopher, and this is
There's
Christopher
Christopher
Rice.
Hanna. See, this is what like people always wonder me, like, because I've known Chris for 20 years, Chris Hanna. And I always say Chris Hanna, Chris Hanna, Chris Hanna. Like when
Everybody
I'm talking to
knows
his
me by my last
ex-girlfriend,
name.
Chris Hanna, Chris Hanna, Chris Hanna. It's because there's too many goddamn Chris's. And Chris Hanna.
My last
Chris
name
Hanna.
stuck with my name, and it's been there since like 1st or 2nd grade. It just goes with my name. Like that's my name, Chris Hanna. Like it's never just my first name. And I never once called it. Although in high school for a little while it was just Hannah, and like I said on my mission, it was Hanito. Ay, Hanito. Ay, Hanito.
This comment though, Christopher Rice. There was a lot of Mongs in my mission because the Mongs all went to Northern California and Minnesota. Have you gotten to have dinner in a Hmong house? That was as a food guy, because like I was raised in a multi-ethnic, multicultural house, and so and then on top of that, I've just got the food thing. I've got like the double dose of wanting to try everything, and then I got sent to the land of ranch dressing. But one of the little glimmers of light was Hmongs, and I got to eat in some Hmong houses, and it was just a blessing from God for me. That's just so wonderful. Anyway,
Fargo fan there. Christopher says I appreciate it. Never heard of McClellan until this podcast. Well, McClellan, I think the guy is a bit at the forefront of the guy trying to bring in critical theory to be useful to Mormons, unless he gets kind of spit out by that, and I think he might get spit out. But he was trying to blend it all together, and like I said, that's the mecha monster.
I could see him being spit out and taking a wad with him. Oh, you got to get it in a long house. Because the other thing is, like, I don't know. I don't know what it is like in Minnesota because it gets a lot colder there than it does where I was. But the other thing about the Hmong people that like just cracks me up, and here's a good opportunity to shit on white postmodernist hippie types. All the people like, oh, I'm gardening. All these white Mormon housewives like, I grew a garden in my backyard. I've got 3 basil plants and 6 tomatoes. Have you ever seen what the Hmongs can do with somebody's backyard? Like they grow vertically. Like it's 8 feet high. The Hmongs are the most amazing farmers I've ever seen. Not that I have a huge amount of experience, but like where I was in California, a lot of the members, had like, a half an acre for a backyard. And rather than deal with mowing it all the time, they would just tell the Hmongs, use it. And the Hmongs would use it as farmland. Holy shit. You have never seen somebody grow so much food on so little land. And it was astounding to me. And chickens and everything. The Hmongs were so amazing. And of course, I didn't get called on a Hmong speaking mission. I should have been, but alas.
Miss Connie, sister-in-law's Cambodian, great food, and Christopher Rice, his wife is Cambodian. Hmong are amazing. Well, you guys are all lucky food-wise. Let's get into this Pomo, which what do you call it? The pragmatism. Is that showing?
Oh
us?
my God!
Hey, by the way, take your male gaze off. Take your male gaze off the thing from the magical conversation with an atheist witch on this atheist channel about atheistic stuff.
Make sure to take your male gaze off of her because Bill Reel certainly won't.
That way.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm just telling you, like
So
that still image.
It looks like an AI.
I'd love to start with.
No, like if there's if there's a 1 in 3 chance, who has a cluster B personality disorder? Just by
Because
that's still
one of your taglines
You're going by physiognomy. You're a physiognomist now.
is that you were an atheist witch, and instantly I was like, "Tell me everything."
Yeah, there's a journey to tell. Huh?
Yes, so I really want to.
Atheists
you
don't
could just
believe
start
in
with like
magic.
your early faith experience, spirituality, religion experience, and how you kind of came to be TikTok's atheist witch.
And I had my grandparents who were, my grandmother was Christian and my grandfather was atheist. And then my father's family were strict Roman Catholic. So I had pulls of Christianity from both sides, but my grandfather was the smartest person that I knew. So when he would explain things in a way that I could understand, because especially being a little neurodivergent child, I never stopped asking questions. And the thing was, is that from both aspects, from the religious standpoints, they couldn't answer my question.
Neurodivergent has become meaningless.
So that
can we agree on that?
Yes.
It just means that I'm a little quirky.
In fact, like I tried to have this conversation with a friend and she shut me down because she's well down the woke ex-Mormon thing. But she's like, I just got diagnosed as autistic. And I
she's
kind of
excited too.
Yeah, kind of like, but and I kind of started to go down this road and she just knew where we were going and we immediately shut down. It's the same person that when she left the church, I said, I'm sorry.
I watched this. There's this. Maybe I'll pull it up. But there's this funny skit about how the magic pixie dream girl in movies, and this guy married her, and after marrying her, he realized she was just autistic the whole time.
Yeah. But the place I was going to go with her before she shut me down is that because Chris Hanna probably remembers. Jared's a little younger, but like when I was a kid, autistic was Kim Peek. Do you remember Kim Peek? He lived in Utah. He lived in Salt Lake City, and I remember as a kid seeing him at the Salt Lake Library.
You're talking about Rain Man.
Yeah,
my other friend knew him and talked to him.
Based on like a little bit of Mormon Utah history. The character of Rain Man in that movie was based on a real person, Kim Peek, who was a citizen of Salt Lake City. And I never talked to him because, like, even as a kid,
James
we were
talked
told,
to
like,
him.
you'll
James
see
has
him
been on this podcast, talked to him all the time, and he said he had an amazing memory, but couldn't remember him. No matter how many times he talked to him, he'd be like, what's your name? What's your name?
Kim Peek memorized phone books. He was famous for memorizing phone books from all over the world. You could tell him your name and phone number in St. Paul, Minnesota. He would tell you your zip code without skipping a beat, right? Dang. But the guy couldn't dress himself. I mean, I might be making that up. But the point is, like, he had to live with his parents. He had to have support the whole time. He, like... and so like that's what I was going. It's like when I was a kid, autistic was this kind of thing. I remember there was like a 60 Minutes and watching PBS episodes. This is all in the late 80s, early 90s about autistic people, and they were people who like I remember there's a guy. They took him on a helicopter ride over Paris, and then he went home and drew an astoundingly accurate line drawing panorama of Paris. That's what autism was, right? Because like this new thing of like, oh, I'm neurodivergent, like, well, I'm awkward socially and I have some interests. Like,
I think there is a thing
welcome to the
there,
fucking
but
club. That's just what's being smart is.
Yeah, there's a thing there, whatever they're talking about, but it's not. It shouldn't be grouped in with what we used to know as autism.
Well, because that's the thing. I think autism right now. Like, there used to be autism, and then there was this thing called Asperger's, and then they said no, it's all the spectrum, and then that spectrum got smashed into a dot.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think there's for sure like something like some sort of between like some OCD behaviors and some ADHD behaviors, and then some I don't know, some ways of grouping, seeing the world in this like systematized way over like an interpersonal way.
See, to me it all feels like this.
That, like autism meant that you couldn't really function independently in society. Like that used to be one of the things. Like if you were autistic, it meant like not that you were totally dependent, but that like you needed some kind of assistance to stop things from getting bad.
Yeah, to me it feels like this response to the fact that in America, for whatever reason, you're not allowed to say anything nice about yourself outwardly. You have to just say things that will lead people to imply nice things about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that saying things like saying, "Oh, I've been diagnosed as autistic" at this point is, or neurodivergent, is that, "Oh, I'm different and strange and mysterious, and I'm smart, and I'm all these things." Like, people try to come up with clever ways to call themselves smart, because when they just outwardly say I'm smart, like Bill Reel going on about his 140 IQ, people like me step in and just laugh my ass off at him.
I don't know my IQ, and I don't want to know my IQ.
Me neither. I'm so like deathly afraid that I'll have like a 90 or something. This thing
like
that. I
my entire life, people have told me that I was smart, and I've never felt smart. All I've ever felt like is that I have a good memory. In fact, I've said a lot of times that, like, to my mind, what other people see in me as smart, I call pathological curiosity. But like, you know, my autism is things like, I can tell you the number and caliber of machine guns on World War II airplanes.
But that's
just an interest.
Data.
That's just
data, and then there's
an
connecting data, and connecting data is one of the things that's hard for people to do. And then there's abstractions, being able to think in abstractions.
But like autistic, like the way that's the thing. The definition is like, you know, the Kim Peek type of autism, the Temple Grandin type of autism. I'm not that. I'm just an awkward nerd with a good memory. And like, for me to walk around being like, well, I'm autistic.
But so, and then it gets used colloquially on the internet, and I actually use it that way sometimes, although it's not the greatest thing. Andrew Clavin actually had like a good segment on it pretty recently, and it's kind of talking about that Noah Harari way of viewing the world. And it's a little bit, I'd even call like some like those red pill guys a little bit on like that level, just in the sense of you get a very, very, very systemized view of how people interact with each other. So you kind of stop seeing like the humanity and how people act with each other, and you start like breaking down animalistically the systems of how these people are interacting, how those people are interacting. And a lot of people, the way Clavin pointed to it, is almost all of Silicon Valley, which is now starting to run most of our technocracy, kind of has this view of people in that mechanistic way. They kind of lose the humanity in it and just kind of thinks about what are their purchasing powers, what are their actions in the day, what do they do as we track them on their cell phones. And
you're one of the few people that got it. But one of the most brilliant, pithy, fewest words possible things that I'm proud of was many years ago when I came to the realization that autism causes vaccines. I was proud of that one because I'd spent 15 years arguing with people about like, no, vaccines don't cause autism, and then I realized, like, hang on a second, autism causes vaccines.
It causes technocracy. It for sure does. And the thing is, like, some of that mechanistic view, which some people also look at that as the difference between modernist and pre-modern views of how you view humanity, because a modernist view is just viewing how useful something is. Like, you look at a lake and you stop seeing the majesty and the metaphysical idea of a lake, and you just start seeing like, how many BTUs of water is that for my supplies? And
can I land an amphibious airplane on?
Can I land an amphibious? Yeah. And so there is some sort of sense of that, of like just viewing things for their usefulness, viewing things for how pragmatically useful they are, instead of their metaphysical beauty. Yeah.
Is that the exotic woman you fetishize walking behind you there? Is that your because remember, the only reason that you would ever fall in love with a Latin American woman is because you have a fetish for whatever it is, minorities.
Yeah. I saw like a whole podcast about that, like across. I learned about that from Critical Theory. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it's romantic colonialism.
Let's see how many times they talk. So she talks about how, I am a witch, but I'm an atheist. So everything I'm doing is just for ritual.
I am walking the perfect line. You cannot criticize me.
Yeah. Oh, look how 30 times ritual comes up. It's in spirituality. It's in the middle of that word. And these guys talk about spirituality a whole lot. Your faith experience in spirituality.
Well, an atheist in high school.
Atheists came to you early, and then you just continued to explore and found benefits to rituals and myth and some of these stories, but you kept your skepticism through the whole way.
Yes, there's
I want all of the things. I want to be skeptical, and I also want to believe in magic. So I just take both of those things. I'm gonna have my cake, and I'm also gonna eat it, but I'm gonna vomit it back up perfectly in cake form anytime I want it, just to look at it.
well, who do you pray to? And I'm like, well, I don't pray to anybody. But I'm a firm believer that witchcraft is more so just really spicy psychology for the most part, and self-care and going through rituals, which I think people get the term ritual is kind of scary for them. But a birthday party is a ritual. So
I like the part when she goes into, they ask her about like astrology and shit like that, and her answer to that is, it's not like, well, here's what it means and here's what it doesn't. It's like, oh, astrology and tarot, they're great because they can tell you a lot about a person. If the person believes in them, you know something about that person. If they don't believe in it, that you know something about that person. That's what tarot and astrology can do. You're trying to find magic where it isn't.
Yeah. That's
and I really enjoy her, and I stay in contact with her. And some of the things, like, you know, some of when I talk to her, we've done tarot readings before, some of it gets a little too woo for me, and I have to maybe retranslate some things in my mind. But even sitting and we
tarot. So tarot comes up. So as they go through it, the tarot's a little bit too woo, but then they start saying, start doing tarot, and then you get a lot out of tarot, and you should try the tarot.
You know, things like that are very,
Would
very
you ever let
know?
somebody do a tarot reading on you? Like if one of your friends came up to you and like, what would you say?
My sister.
Did she do it?
Tarot.
Here's the
Like,
astrology.
I feel like it would be...
What this lady made me think about is because, like, you know, because I've told a lot of times about how, you know, one of the big faith destroyers in my life was when I was 12 or 13, and I saw the PBS special Secrets of the Psychics with James Randi, and one of the things he does in that episode is rip the pants off of astrology. And so, like, I used to argue with my big sister about this stuff, and when I was 16, her present to me was this big textbook-sized books called, I think it was called The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need. And me being an autist, I'm like, okay, I read the whole fucking thing. And there's this whole thing where, like, you have to go and get your star charts and make your star chart, right? And I spent weeks on this. I went through the whole thing. I think I had to go to the library to get some data. I had to, like, go find a protractor and like literally draw the lines. This was, you know, pre-internet. And I, following the instructions in this textbook-sized astrology book, I drew my star chart and interpreted it. But I'd already seen James Randi, and I knew the trick, which is, like, they just present dyads and say, you're this or this. You're this or this.
Yes,
you know?
but...
and, like, because the thing is, like, you know, they said, like, because, you know, I'm a Taurus. And they say, like, Tauruses are verbose, but sometimes... don't know what to say.
Well, it's
like, oh, you mean like everybody at one time or another,
or it's something that's so complimentary that it'll apply to anybody if they want.
But Bill, by the
like,
end of this, says that he says he gets use out of that. He gets use, and it's useful. And here's just the exact thing that he needed to hear and wanted to hear at the right time. But I'm still an atheist.
Yeah, the archetypical astrology thing is, you know, you are outgoing, but sometimes you don't know what to say.
You're a person.
Like, yeah, so like, yeah, you're a human being going through life.
It feels like doing cold readings when they're like, I'm getting somebody in this room full of people with somebody who has died because they're coming here to talk to a medium. Somebody getting an M or a J. Well, one of the two most common.
on all of those "Are you trans?" things that are aimed at teenagers.
Have you seen that website that says, are you trans? And the answer is yes. Like, you go to the website and the very first thing it says is yes.
Well, not even that, but it's like, you know, like, do you like your body? Mm-hmm. Well, almost no one does. You know, like, are you awkward? Almost everyone is, you know, or at least almost everyone feels awkward, you know, because I mean, that's one of those things that's so insidious about that. Because there's, you know, there's all the people, you know, you find out later where it's like, you know, like, I always considered you to be so in control and confident and all that stuff. And you find out later, like, no, I was internally a nightmare of anxiety, you know, and you had no idea that, like, you were perceiving something entirely different from them. The whole, the trans movement It's just like astrology and tarot. They buy into that. Not even buy into that, sorry. They exploit that. You know, people are complex. We are a lot of contradictions fighting each other all the time.
So reading some of the comments, I've realized this is a new religion. I'm not interested from Ed Bedlam. Yeah. And 100% flip. It's so diluted. It's meaningless. Talking about autism. From Miss Connie. I remember that. That was amazing. Hold on.
I don't know what he's remembering.
And it's a huge disservice to people who truly have autism because resources are now stretched so thin.
Yes, that is a thing.
Watch the Black, is that Balloon or Ballon? If you are interested in autism, pretty intense when it is severe. Ballon. Todd in the Shadows had like a long episode on 99 red balloons this week. Is pretty good, learning like the whole history of that song. I just say we'll have the autistics do our spy work in the apocalypse. I work special ed at public high school. Oh yeah, so you've been through it. I took a class where I worked with those kids for one semester, and it was hard stuff to, keeping up with them. I mean, but they were also fun too.
Well, wait.
Make autism great again. Novelty, pathological curiosity. Nice, yeah. Let's keep going.
Miss Connie says she works special ed.
So I would consider
that's always been fascinating to me. My dad worked a little bit of special ed stuff.
Yeah, I knew a special ed teacher too.
astrology
It's hard. It's hard stuff.
Same category that I consider tarot. Now, while they're both a pseudoscience and not applicable in any type of scientific way, I think that they're very useful in psychological applications. So, for instance, astrology or tarot, if
like
someone says to
dice.
you, "Oh, what's your sign?" and you say, "Oh, I don't believe in that," that tells you so much about that person from a psychological standpoint. If they say, "Oh, I'm a Leo," then that also tells you a bunch about that person from a psychological standpoint. So I think in a social aspect,
it tells them like psychologically they believe in this or they
get to know somebody, whether they like that or not, whether they believe in that or not. That's telling you so much about them in one simple sentence. Now, when it comes to tarot, which again is sort of the same vein, tarot is also applicable in a psychological stance. So, you know, if you pull up a card, it's the same as you're playing a deck of cards, right? Whether you believe that there is a metaphysical or supernatural aspect to tarot, I personally do not. But if you do, that's again applicable to your life, because if a certain card comes up, that may trigger something in your psyche that hasn't been triggered in a long time, maybe something that needs maintenance. So,
and they said at one point that nature.
Hey, she lost me there, like, because at the beginning part, I'm like, yeah, no, you're right.
They
like,
say one part that nature guides you. It's nature that'll take you there.
In the very cynical sense,
yeah.
In the very cynical sense, when you're a con man and you ask somebody, what's your sign? They say, I don't believe in that shit. You know to move on. When somebody says, I'm a Leo, you've got a mark.
Yeah, but I know that, like, she's claiming that, and then she's claiming the non-magical version of it as being magical, because the non-magical version of what it tells you is just like anything. You could say, like, do you believe in God? And if a person, or do you believe in Jesus? Is he your savior? And yes, that tells you a lot about that person psychologically.
You could learn everything.
The thing that tarot aims to tell you. That tarot doesn't aim to tell you.
That's exactly the point. Is these guys
you could learn everything she's talking about by playing Monopoly with somebody.
But all of what they're suggesting doing is also kind of the same conclusions like a lot of the Po-Mo religious people are kind of doing and going along with her saying with that. And you could even kind of point at Peterson's pragmatism with it and saying and go and act. Peterson might be telling people to try to be more authentic and really engage with it and what you don't know, but at the same time too, there's still a level of go act and act it out and pull the thing out of it. But one of the deals is with it is like, I can allow you this, I can allow you this, do this all day, whatever. But you guys don't allow this of like some Mormon person or somebody circling back to that world of like as soon as you're an atheist, any sort of woo thing is on the table. But you can't go back to any sort of traditional thing. That's just no.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know anything about this lady other than what I've seen, and maybe I'm being unfair, maybe not. But what's her opinion on people who offer thoughts and prayers after a tragedy?
Oh,
well, I can show you some of that.
Are you gonna get to that? Because she talks about it.
Oh, really? I thought I was shooting in the dark.
First, let's look at this, because suddenly, like, it's just the tarot card might spark your brain, but then, like Jared says, there's something metaphysical calling you.
Is this part where Bill Real comes in his pants?
Oh, yeah, I got that.
Present. Nature calls you to be present. Nature calls you to observe the universe all around you.
Nature definitely calls.
nature, you know, they're not doing God
Nature
stuff at all.
calls
It's
is a
just nature.
euphemism for I need to pee.
Yeah.
I need to hear the metaphysics
which I need to be.
in your statement.
What are
Did
you
she
drinking,
say thoughts
Jared?
and prayers, especially?
It's just water.
Oh, I was gonna say
It's-
it's in a super big gulp cup.
Oh
There you
yeah, it's
go.
I
just
thought we
water.
called that. That's not an Idaho margarita.
No. This is just April. April is sober.
Oh,
But
well, aren't you fancy?
for me, it was so much more precious than someone saying, sending thoughts and prayers, because
Why?
it was like this person took time out of their day. They lit something. It doesn't matter.
like
what
lighting
the
a
thing
candle is
they
more
took
than
a
thoughts and
picture
prayers.
just
Yeah, so
to
that's what
show
you
thoughts
that
and
I
prayers?
was
No, like
really
Okay,
something
but
and-
think about this. Think about this, because these are ex-Mormons, right? Not the witch lady, but these other two, they're ex-Mormons. And so saying thoughts and prayers, like I guarantee there's been a time when both of them have raged to their ex-Mormon friends about how their mom put their name on the prayer roll sheet in the temple. And I'm like, if you want to talk about taking time out of your fucking day, name a religious act more tedious and time-consuming and schedule engulfing than going through a goddamn endowment session, writing someone's name on a list and putting it in there. That's a thing they had to do. It took hours of their time and scheduling and finding babysitters, all that shit.
Yeah.
And she lit a candle. And I'm like, I'm not shitting on the lighting of the candle. Honestly, like if a friend of mine believed in weird witch shit and was like, I feel bad for what you're going through, I'm lighting a candle in your honor, I would be heartwarmed. In the same way that I'm heartwarmed whenever my grandma says, hey, I'm praying for you, I know you're struggling with blah or whatever. I'm like, thanks, grandma. I love you and I appreciate you. That's awesome.
Fucking Clavin, wish it into the cornfield. Tucker says Trump has a special, unique autism. Well, there. I actually saw something. I forget what the name of that Twitter feed is. This guy was just recently on Chris Williamson. Crap, maybe I'll remember. But he talks about
hawkish owl.
How
it's an owl that has hawk-like qualities.
He talks about how neurodivergence, or just some sort of male brain that has a need to just speak truth, if you get in people's faces about that being that way and calling them trolls, that might be some sort of oppression against a neurodivergent type of person. You getting down on people who can't help but speak truth out when they see some situation.
Yeah.
Sure. But let's see. Brilliant. Witchual. Spiritual witch. Oh no. Let's see. Spicy psychology. Bingo card. Self-care manifest society. Yep, that's all. I let someone do the tarot for me once. I don't remember it at all.
Yeah, but you
Here's
were probably
Jonathan.
tripping.
I'm at the part where we're all talking about being able to feel the magic and things with the skeptic brain. The Harry Potter Wizarding World at Universal Magical Butterbeer is holy sacrament.
That is a very look. I can't afford to take trips to wherever the butterbeer is. You classist.
I think it's important to find things that you can find magical, and we're kind of talking crap on these guys right here, but at the same time, like, they're so postmodern, self-aware of that they're doing something goofy, and then not wanting to just admit that they're doing the witchcraft. And there's part of me that just says, just do the witchcraft, man. Like, just be what you are, or pretend to do it or whatever, because your workaround isn't working. Or find something that's real. And that's why I think psychedelics are kind of interesting, only because they allow some brain that's kind of like overly hyper vigilant of the self to get out of it a little bit. But we got to find other ways to get out of it. Find something magical that you really feel is still magical, or you can see the magic.
Oh, this isn't a good kind of magic. I was gonna say this $10 Portuguese wine is magical. For $10, this is really good wine.
No, that is a good example of, like, just find something that's magical to you. Rise of the Resistance was magical. Butterbeer is holy sacrament.
What is it? What is butterbeer?
I don't know, but
if it's for
butterbeer,
kids, how good can
it's like
it be?
Butterscotch root beer.
Dude, okay, but here's the thing. Butterbeer, the problem is it probably won't live up to what I thought, because that was the first thing I remember as a kid, a fictional food or beverage that I was like, I fucking want that.
Yeah, it was good. The only thing to me
Oh.
is that it was really, really sweet, and like I couldn't chug a ton of it, but
It's
good.
cream soda with butter and caramel flavor added.
It's good.
Okay,
It's tasty.
that sounds delicious.
But you just autistically like broke it down to its parts into
You ruined it.
consumption idea and that
Deconstructed
sort of
butterbeer,
thing.
you son of a bitch.
Your system brain broke it, and I'm being oppressive to your neurodivergence right here. But let us have our magic, you shit. Archetypes are definitely right around the corner in this. Yes, they do bring up Jung, which Jung was everybody screamed about it when it was Peterson. Now all everybody else is getting into it.
And now we like Jung again. What the fuck?
Yes, I do. It's a tough job, but our motto is never a full day. We see some crazy stuff. I believe that. She's talking about the classes.
Right. Over the last, it intensified in the last 2 months, but it's been about 10 years that my dear friend and neighbor is schizophrenic, and that's a progressive disease, and boy, is he progressing rapidly, and you're not kidding, never a dull day.
Pomo religious people, I tell them not to pray for me, and I tell them to pray someone who needs it.
Oh,
I was still mostly Mormon, actually, and I remember
that's just a humble brag.
I'd like to learn more about the placebo effect from Marty. It's on my bucket list. Don't take the placebos, man. That's doing drugs.
Placebo effect. We need to like strike from our vocabulary when we say things like, it's probably just the placebo effect. Because if you learn anything about it, you're like, what the fuck do you mean just the placebo effect? Your brain just broke cancer or whatever. I don't know.
Question. What he's saying, and because he's had other comments before this one, what he's saying is that why call it magic? Why not just call it human psychology? Why not just call it what it is? What is the usefulness in putting labels on it of witchcraft?
You don't have to go to college
magic
to get a degree in
because I want to.
Alchemy, for instance, when those words have
alchemy.
these other meanings that are supernatural, why give it supernatural language when it's really non-supernatural things going on?
I think that's actually an excellent question. Whether they're trolling or not, I think it's an excellent question. And my answer to that would be because
asking a question that's just skeptical is that might be a troll.
We are.
I know she does talk about being a troll. Part of it's because he's a man and not all men.
So she says some of the reason why she does it. I don't know if she says it right here. I think it's coming up. Is that it? Well, it does. She does say it right here. I'll let her say it.
Repressed us. We are pushing back against misogyny and patriarchy, and terms like witchcraft and witch and alchemy and things like that piss off the right people. It makes you think. And even though witchcraft is just spicy psychology, in my
it's to piss off the trolls.
Application of it.
There it is.
We're having this
smuggled
conversation because of it. So we are talking.
It's more than smuggled. Let's just look up how many times they say the word patriarchy. 11 times.
Yeah, she's pretty overt about it. She does that thing where they do that
it's
thing
written on the side of the truck. I'm fighting patriarchy.
They do this thing that I love it when people do this. She says something about men, makes a generalization about men, and does that. Of course, not all men. I know I have to make that disclaimer because I'm like, well, fuck you.
I
we make that disclaimer
about
every time we talk about anyone at all.
So she says she's the gray witch because nothing's black and white. But then, of course, they always have their out groups, just like Samantha in her rant today says, how dare you guys have out groups when, of course, she has out groups. And
what's funny is like for somebody who's trying to blur the contrast, you're wearing an awful lot of foundation and lipstick.
Yeah, and she talks about the male gaze, and then Bill talks about her putting up sexy pictures, and why are all your pictures sexy? Oh, and you want to see her thoughts on that? Well, anyway, let's listen to a couple of these patriarchies.
Because there is this thing, especially under patriarchy, that because women need to be at home and be mothers and be sexually available to their husbands, you have to always.
So everything's patriarchy.
Useless to the community, right?
Well, that's because under patriarchy, our worth is determined.
So that's more of the episteme that I'm talking about. You have this a priori assumption that this patriarchy thing is a real thing. Like you guys are in this world of open to all the ideas everywhere, except this patriarchy thing is just an axiom that's there, that's never questioned by blue church people.
I know, just because like you know how many times that we're hanging out at the bar with the dudes and we're like, hey, I never see your wife, and you go, well, yeah, she's at home in the kitchen waiting for sex, and we go, good job.
Yeah.
Specifically,
like no, that doesn't happen. People go, that's weird. We never see your wife. Are you guys okay?
And that's such, excuse me, bullshit. Because women we're like wine, baby. We get better as we age. And that's what the patriarchy doesn't want you to know. They want to keep women submissive, young. Oh, you're only valuable if you're young and pretty. And then you have no value in society.
You have spent way too much time on your hair and makeup to be talking like this.
No, I know, but like this is just kind of is biological reality, and it's one of the few places I will allow the phrase male privilege, because male privilege is the fact that men are of reproduction age pretty much until we die, right? Like, so it's not a hurry for us. I actually feel bad for women in this, but it also makes sense that like your 50-year-old man can still be attractive to a huge number of women, but your 50-year-old woman, it's harder for her to be as attractive.
Yeah.
This isn't like a hit the wall. I'm not like going red pill on you. I think it sucks. The antidote, by the way, monogamy. You marry someone, because I don't think women age like wine. I think wives age like wine. When you're married to a woman, like you love her more and more the more you spend time, because it becomes like you get closer and it's this great thing.
Yeah,
so
and also,
monogamy will fix your problems.
If we
when my wife gets gray hair, I'm gonna think she's hot.
If we run with your dumb analogy, I got news for you. Like, okay, women age like wine, and in that case, wine gets to live for 7 to 10 years longer than juice. So do you want to trade? Do you want to trade? Do you want to trade 10 years of life on planet Earth?
So it's weird to me. So I watched, just to see how bad it was, I watched some of the most recent Sex in the City just to see just how supersonic woke it was. And it was as supersonic woke as you'd imagine. Then I saw this other movie with Helen Hunt in it. And then I saw the Friends reunion and them talking about it. I was watching all these things, and all I could think about it is I saw the 4 women in Sex in the City. I saw Helen Hunt. I saw the Friends ladies, and every single one of them is jacked up their faces with plastic surgery. And all I could think about is I wish so bad I could see every one of these women like right at their real age, because I bet you they'd all still just be completely pretty to me. You know, I bet you 100%. You know,
like, you know, honestly, like when I see a woman with all done up, like it's a turn off. Where I'm like, okay,
when they start talking and they got the plastic surgery stuff, like I just feel terrible for them. I can't. It messes with my brain. Something weird is there. It's uncanny valley stuff. But in every single one of the situations, I am sure if they hadn't done anything, I'd be attracted to them. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
there
to
be attracted.
That meme going around about, like, you know, I mean, people have seen it. If not, look it up. But it's like a meme. Like, imagine going back to 1993 and telling everybody in 2023, Roseanne Barr will look better than Madonna.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, come on. And like, holy shit.
I know.
Holy shit. It's absolutely true.
I sent a thing to the group that I feel like is applicable.
So let's listen to this, because listen to how fast they always like turn the gaze around, because the gaze is always just around the corner.
But out where someone was saying like, ew, you're not even attractive. You're not as curvy as I would want. And, you know, and it was just such a ridiculous comment of just like, well, your body isn't the way that I find attractive. Right. And so you had this kind of spicy answer of bringing up his picture, and it was a conventionally older, perhaps more unattractive man. And it was just like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Oops.
Oh, is that
Hold on, God damn it. So,
you gotta get the audio with that warfare.
One. That's part of not living for.
Isn't that what you just shared with me?
But... Yeah, I shared it with you. You gotta turn the sound on though. It's funny.
Oh.
Let me finish this. I'll go back to that.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just terrifying.
This kind of spicy answer of bringing up.
So, well, I guess that we covered that immediately she turns the gaze back on like whatever sort of guy's commenting her. But she says a lot of like what she's doing is against the patriarchy and against all the males making comments to her and all that sorts of stuff. But that's why she's doing it. And well, let me go to the other one. Let's see what you shared here.
This is just what I thought of when.
Look, turn up volume.
They just...
Yeah. Music does make that work.
I love you.
It's just that the whole time.
That's fucking brilliant. I just barely read the
Millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of white dudes walk
That's
right
what I
into
think of.
20 years old.
This is what I think. Like this, I always bring that to the Jordan Peterson thing, where he's like, no. Like maybe a few guys were in charge, but most of them weren't. Like we were in the shit together, women and men. All right.
No, like when they
and
like
that
when they
was
ever
the
talk about
shit
like
that men were into it. That sucked.
women couldn't vote. It's like, yeah, that's true. Also, women couldn't go to prison. Women were almost never executed. You know, like there were no women in debtors' prisons because their debts were the responsibility of their fathers and husbands because of patriarchy. Duh.
So, are you ready for some simping?
Oh my god! Please show the simp. I love this part so much.
Have you thought about writing a book?
I am writing a book, yes.
Oh, I love it. You are damn intelligent and articulate, and
Thank you.
You speak at a pace
For a woman.
that I can.
And I would know because I have a 140 IQ.
Mind is moving and doing so on all cylinders, and kudos to you.
It's chaos in here.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, is
I
that
believe that.
part of your neurospicy?
Let's see.
Gut. They'll tell you. They'll tell you what's up. Listen to them.
I love it.
Really beautiful.
Oh, this is
Billy,
This has
got
been one of
anything
my
else?
favorite.
wait. This is her terrible advice. You know,
Gut. They'll tell you. They'll tell you what's up.
she's
Listen
saying,
to
listen
them.
to your head and
Really
your heart
beautiful.
and your gut.
Billy,
This has
got
been one of
anything
my
else?
favorite conversations we've
Oh,
done.
thanks,
This is
guys.
episode number 146.
That's no different than saying listen to the still small
we've
voice.
interviewed.
I mean, it's the same
I
thing.
think I'd say it's a little bit different because it's listen purely to your impulses always.
Sometimes they
Well, I
argue with
guess
one
so.
another, especially the head and the heart if you're in love. But your head, your heart, and your gut, they'll tell you. They'll tell you what's up.
And then listen to
Listen to
simping
them.
right after.
Wait,
Really
no, I'm
beautiful.
confused.
God damn it!
My head tells me I want dan noodles. My gut tells me I want dan noodles, and my heart tells me that I want dan noodles with the German Riesling.
All right,
So-
let's let her get through the deepity and then the simp.
Okay.
Make it.
Sometimes they argue with one another, especially the head and the heart if you're in love. But your head, your heart, and your gut, they'll tell you. They'll tell you what's up. Listen to them.
I love it.
Really beautiful. Billy,
This has
got
been one of
anything
my
else?
favorite conversations we've
Oh,
done.
thanks,
This is
guys.
episode number 146. We've interviewed really like super well-known authors, scholars. This is one of the most enjoyable conversations, maybe the most enjoyable conversation I've had.
He getting laid tonight. Get some Bill Real.
Yeah, so they talk about
Poor Bill Real.
horoscopes and they talk about poor Bill Real. Oh, and at the end they talk about in the future they're going to do an episode because Sam was pushing Buddhism today several times. At the end of it, they promise in the future they're going to do an episode on all the sexism and male gaze in Buddhism.
Talking about that next week, and then the week after we have a Zen Buddhist who's going to come talk to us, a female Zen Buddhist who really has a lot to say about sexual abuse in the Buddhist community and patriarchy in Buddhism, and I'm really
So when you
Oh my
argue that
God.
you can't do the Mormon stuff because it causes harm, do you think there's like any causing harm in the witchy world, in the pagan world? Do you think there's any causing harmy in the Buddhist world? Do you think like everything's a value judgment and everything's just, and then you're making all these arguments to just pragmatically do it and join a thing, but don't join the other one because
That's one of those many things that over the last 20 years that I've pissed off all of my lefty friends is the Free Tibet movement. Because I remember 20 years ago when I learned about how, like, as shitty as communists are, the Chinese liberated Tibet from the Buddhists. You know? Like,
oh, that's another
the
thing.
whole Dalai Lama Free Tibet thing, like, no, Tibetan Buddhism, like, Tibet, before the Chinese, Tibet was one of the last serfdoms on earth.
Yeah. And she talks about Well, I'm sure back in the days when they were burning witches, they would have burnt me. Just this week, Benjamin Boyce had this lady on.
Wait, so there's Selma envy? She has Salem envy.
Yeah, she did a deep dive into the person on Benjamin Boyce's podcast, and she says she's going to release the whole thing on it. But she did a deep dive into the whole witchcraft, the witch trial stuff, and she said if you look into that, most of that was social. The same stuff that's going on with the trans movement type stuff. It was social contagion of young women. It was young women spreading around and pushing it. And there's like way different story than what you've been told from the Crucible and all this sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Well, like, the story is just like society hates women. They picked these three to kill.
So some households were stuck in the 60s until the 90s. That is true. Outside of isolated religious communities, I guess. Just take a whip after this, and Bill will make your wife tear your back off. That'll solve the problem. Bill is definitely contemplating suicide. Bill was acting like he's into it. Zelig, is that a reference to Woody Allen?
Oh, Zelig, I love that movie. I haven't seen that in a while.
She means knowing comes from within, knuckleheads. None at all.
In regards to what? Knowing
comes within.
That's Buddhism.
Okay. Share the screen. All right. So
that's a classic Hitch joke.
Anyway, that's their pragmatic witchiness going on, which fine. Like I said, fine.
Carry on.
But there's a part. Oh, I guess I should have pulled it up. Where they said it's just if it works, then there's something there. Yes. Yes, that's been our point. About all these other kind of religious things. There's something.
Is that just a different way of saying? Wait, are they trying to say that by their witchy fruits ye shall know them?
Yep.
Yeah, this is saying it here.
But it works, and if it works, it's still rational and functional.
Oh,
yes, if it works, then there's something there. Like you can't
wait.
Okay,
How long have you been listening to Jordan Peterson, you alt-right Nazi?
That's the entire pragmatic argument of that stuff. It works, something works and is working, and you guys are making the argument for Peterson, or even any sort of like religious person who talks about stuff that survived and thrived over time, the stuff that we've talked about, although. That I'm not saying go become a witch or go become a Pomo Mormon.
But our entire lives we've
Mormon
encountered with people who say like, look, I can't explain it all. I can't justify it all. I just know it works for me. Okay.
So the last thing, and Jonathan said, Jonathan, if you're out there, you want to jump on, talk about this one. But this is you guys listen to this one.
He's going to roast me next time he gets on.
Don't come on. We don't want to be roasted at all.
We're not self-aware.
Don't give us. We know what type of person does that. It's a troll.
You're going to troll, and we don't. You son of a bitch.
We don't feed the trolls over here.
No.
I watched this one.
So this was a devotional.
Did I tell you my theory on this?
What's that?
My theory on this, because John DeLynn is like trying to reach out to this guy and get him on the podcast. Yeah. And everybody's saying that he wants to struggle session him. They're probably right to some degree, but what I think is that this guy seems kind of femmy to me.
What?
There's that atheist trope, that the religious guy who gets a little bit unhinged in regards to homosexuality is closet gay, right? So my theory is that John DeLynn is he's going to try to getting a boner just thinking about a Mormon. Is he a 70? I don't know. Coming out as gay in tears on his podcast, just the empathy that would portray.
I'm afraid of getting flagged for this, but before we watch this one, watch this.
Actually, Mr. Billup, I was wondering if I could keep the swimsuit issue, if you don't mind.
Yeah, right. I'm going to give up the swimsuit issue.
Well, sir, I just figured that it's not on the newsstands anymore, and I figured you'd miss it.
And why would you figure that?
Well,
Hi, honey.
Hi,
What's the holdup?
Nothing, dear.
Well, now I really am confused.
And why is that?
Well, I thought you were gay.
What? Well, that's insane.
You remember the kids in the hall when what's his name comes out as gay to his family, and his family like starts rejoicing. He's like, I'm gay, and the whole like place falls a parade for him because everybody else knew before he knew. It's in Kids in the Hall Brain Candy. It's one of the funniest scenes in that.
Oh yeah.
He's like, I'm gay,
That's
and
a
he does like a whole
brilliant
song, I'm gay, and everyone's like, yes. Even his kids are like, yeah. He's gay.
No, it's like it's in the intro. It's in the opening of the show where the wife comes home and the kids are in the downstairs watching TV, and she goes, "Where's your father?" And they say, "Upstairs masturbating to gay porn," and she just goes, "Again."
Yeah. So keep that.
Although
guy in
that's
mind
the thing
as
is
we
like
listen to
I
this
just
guy.
saw a hilarious meme with about the Kids in the Hall. Where it's like a drinking game where it's like drink every time Kevin McDonald plays a woman but doesn't use a wig because he's got a fro.
That's so funny. But anyway, that's going along with what Jared said of why he thinks John DeLynn wants this guy on his podcast. So think of that as you listen to his voice.
This is why I think he won't actually struggle session. He'll kind of struggle session him into like goading him into admitting he's gay. The guy's not going to go on his podcast, though. That's it's not going to happen.
My young brothers and sisters, we've just got to stop allowing other people to tell us whether we're good enough, attractive enough, rich enough, famous enough, desirable.
Oh, I thought you were gay. What?
This guy is very animated for a Mormon at General Conference.
That's
He is. But
that's Dana Carvey's exact face right there. What?
Yeah, he really is.
He gets to the Dylan Mulvaney laugh.
But anyway, this talk still pissed off a bunch of ex-Mormons.
Desirable enough. Stop it.
You'll stop.
Stop it.
Stop it. Talk to the hand.
Just
Talk to the hand.
knock it off.
This guy really is coming off as very fat.
He's like almost as gay as Tanner Gilliland.
Don't do that. Don't do it.
We should only care about what Heavenly Father says about us. That we are of immense worth.
Preach, sister.
In so doing, however, we must be aware of the great destroyer who is working daily to destroy your self-concept.
Who is this guy?
You know,
You should watch the devotional because he's a really, really fucking stellar piano player.
Yeah, so he did a BYU Hawaii devotional.
This guy is on that. He's on the cusp. Like, I'm not saying he's gay, but like
I
he's
wouldn't
as far toward gay as you can be and not be gay.
He
Well,
could totally
I wouldn't
not
be surprised.
I'm kidding. He could totally not be gay. I
wouldn't
feel
be
like
surprised
that's
if he's-
immediately what jumps to John DeLynn's
What's
mind.
his name?
Yeah.
I totally wouldn't be surprised if he's one of those guys who said, "Yeah, I struggled with SSA, but now I'm."
Sure.
I bet you
Yeah.
he's been open about it. But
great destroyer is the great deceiver.
the sailor,
Ultimate lying liar.
well, lying liar, He's
Very
a
theatrical.
liar. But then he's based shit. And then, as we talked about, all sorts of gay people are based as shit.
Oh, hell yeah.
Totally.
Oh, come on, play, fucking dude.
Play. I'm liking this.
It won't play.
Who will stop at nothing to separate us from God. His tactics really haven't evolved much since the garden, but he's certainly adept at staying ahead of the curve. The great deceiver's specialty is his keen interest in your feelings and opinions and personal preferences.
This is the most
quite progressive
emotive
that
and
way.
theatrical General Conference talk I have ever.
It's not
encountered.
General Conference. It's a
Oh.
Hawaii. It's a Hawaii devotional.
It
He's
is.
playing the
Oh, I was
piano
gonna
on the
say
side.
like this. Like
It
this
is, but even
weird.
the devotionals, they usually sort of follow that General Conference voice.
Yeah, no, like they absolutely
And
follow.
he's
the cadence, but,
definitely
like, this
he's
is the
breaking the
closest I've
mold.
ever seen Mormons come to television. Televangelism.
Yeah, they should make him a general.
Paul
authority.
Lind, yeah, absolutely. No, Troy, I brought up
Wants to hear
Bob.
Look at
Price
his
earlier.
face. Look at.
One of my-
I mean,
There it
it's
is.
bad
There it
etiquette to
is.
stop on it, but
One of
oh my gosh, he's
favorite
animated.
One of my favorite brilliant things that Bob Price does as a podcaster about the Bible is that when he's reading quotes, right? Like, for example, he'll be reading like a German radical quoting scripture. And so like he'll do the German radical in German, and then in the scriptures he gives voices to everybody, and the Apostle Paul is Paul Lind. That's who he gives. Bob's Price Paul is Paul Lynde, so I know the Paul Lynde voice because of him.
We're all about it. Your concerns are his concerns, and he knows exactly which rendition of Jesus is pertinent to
You
your
should
cause.
play the devil in the temple, man.
Really,
Lately, it is likely to be a socially relevant liberal Jesus who somehow cares
Taste.
more about your truth than the truth he came to personify, proclaim, and die for.
it makes perfect
deceiver
sense that if you
dishes out
cast Satan
a
in the
new
temple movie, it
gospel.
should be the Femi guy. That fits.
Well, you know
Never
that's
mind anything in this world with money.
well, there's a bunch of those channels. That other channel I talked about, the Is It Gay channel, where they talk about so many villains through history were always coded as gay. If you watch all sorts of old comics or even Looney Tunes and stuff like that, there's all these gay coded villains all throughout it.
There was no Mrs. Wile E. Coyote.
Well, but that's what's sort of kind of funny about it, is that those gay coded villains were everybody's favorite characters. Like everybody loved them, and now you can't do it. So now you're actually, once again, it's like that guy who complained about there's no parts, there's no good parts. All the best parts, all the best Oscar parts are villain parts. And that one guy, he was in the Eternals, that comedian who's Iranian comedian. Yeah, he was complaining there's no good parts for us as villains anymore because of all this wokeness that he, of course, pushed for. But it's true.
Yeah.
You guys killed yourselves for all the best roles in history, which nobody gives a crap about the victor or the.
So you know, I don't like that word hate, but this one thing I do hate: the gospel of your own truth.
Oh, preach it, sister.
Jesus,
Brothers
this guy.
Oh, my truth.
This guy is so theatrical. I love him.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters, my truth is. And then he whispers to all of us, that's much better.
Miss Connie is
to be clear,
more Dana Carvey.
He won't tell you to give up your faith in Jesus.
Well, isn't that convenient? I'm waiting for him to say that.
The original memes that I made was of the church lady, but it was of her going, patriarchy! Because it's been one of my premises that actually Carden from Midnight Mormon says he doesn't like my premise of this. But one of my premises was always like that same church lady is the one who became the woke scold. They're not different people. They're the same person. And I only come up with that theory because that's true in my life. I can name 20 of them. The same 20 who used to get mad at me for listening to Megadeth when I was 13 are the same 20 that are on my Facebook woke scolding me today.
But obviously, some of his outdated theology needs revamping because it no longer works today. A good chunk of it is offensive enough to be considered a hate crime, especially that bit about marriage and sexuality. I mean, Jesus told his followers to love one another, not judge one another. Right? So who are you?
So you're pretty sure the struggle session will be he gets in front of Dylan and he'll be like, come on, you're gay. You know, you're gay. Just say it.
The way he says marriage and sexuality, it sounds like he's talking about wearing white after Labor Day. Ew, that's gross.
So I say it, okay? I know that your sexual preferences are. Yeah, are you same-sex attracted? Okay.
So what I'm saying is, I don't think it'll be like Rob Meldrum, right? I like I said, the guy's not going to go on the channel because he's Mormon. But if he did, in this ideal, beautiful world where it happened, John Dehlin, he would like try to. John Dehlin thinks that he's clever and sneaky, and he's just not. And he would like try to like sneak little ways to convince this guy that he's should come out as gay on his podcast.
So, okay, did you ever like have questioned your sexual identity when you were young? Okay. Did you ever see Man Bear Pig? Did you ever see Man Bear Pig out your window?
Yeah, that's a good John Dehlin voice. Oh, Man Bear Pig. That'd be him quite like, some people experience SSA. That'd be really, really difficult in the church, right?
The church is
if you
patriarchal
ever
and super
experienced that-
serial.
Yeah, so I know I never once thought of the same sex at all. Are you super serial? Are you super serial about that? Are you serial?
How others love. That's just how stealthily and insidiously the father of lies leads members of this church astray.
He said stealthily. I thought he said
distorts God's
stiffly.
word and presents new, different gospel to each generation. And
In the meantime, he's the only person speaking as plainly as Jacob Hansen. Like nobody in the General Conference spoke as plainly as this guy.
he knows how to place deceit in our hearts. He's well acquainted with our carnal desire to rule and worship ourselves. And he's happy to show us how.
Oh, hell!
Simply put, Satan
That's bad.
wants to destroy people.
Satan.
He wants to thwart God's kingdom and purposes and plans. He wants to hurt the people God creates and loves. He wants to wreak havoc on those who are chosen by discouraging, disarming, and derailing us.
Ooh, nice alliteration.
He wants to confuse people and lead them away from the truth of who God is. He wants to kill and destroy the soul of every man, woman, and child. But guess what?
What?
We don't have to be duped.
Oh, Charlie
Jesus
knows.
told his disciples, you remember Matthew 24?
I don't remember. It's been a long time.
Take heed that no man deceive you.
Matt Damon. Okay, let's see it. Jesus didn't say, take care that no man deceive you. Jesus said that when you get deceived, it's good because that's how you get critical theory.
The Bible
Have we
has
got the? Have we got that
absolutely-
meme?
The Bible has absolutely no. The data in the Bible do not support nor deny the postulation that we ought not be deceived. So really, the Bible can tell you nothing about whether or not being deceived is a good or a bad thing.
And also,
your
the
rhetorical
whole concept
goal-
of deception is wasn't actually evidenced in ancient Rome.
This is a complete renegotiation of the text.
Do we have that meme to
I
show
appreciate
that
your
excellent
we
meme that
appreciate the
Kevin
rhetorical
made for
goal.
us?
Oh yeah, I pulled that
Oh.
up.
We gotta show. We
That
gotta
one's
throw that
spread
up
around
there.
the
We gotta spread it
Facebook.
around. So there's no way Dan hasn't seen it.
Oh,
And I
Right,
might
at
want
this
to
point,
add, he's
I
not
posted
even-
it to him a couple times.
Well, like I'm pretty sure I'm shadow blocked on YouTube by him. I think I don't know, because like I told him flat out, like, hey, I'm never letting you forget that I have no political biases thing, and I will keep posting it until you retract your statement. And so I'm guessing I'm just shadow banned at this point.
Here it comes. Kevin made this meme. You might have seen it floppy do around the Twitters.
So perfect. I still want to do the back cover with all the blurbs.
He made a here it is. He made a Trump's Art the Deal, but it's McClellan and not a national bestseller. McClellan, the art of negotiating the text to fit your identity politics while accusing your opponent of negotiating the text to fit their identity politics. An iron law of woke projection masterpiece. The New York Times.
Fucking perfect.
That's
Yeah, I want
the
to do the
funniest part
blurbs
is
on
he
the
didn't even
back
have
where it
to-
says, all right, let's see it. Jesus
All
of
right,
Nazareth.
let's see it.
I wish I'd thought of that, Joseph Smith Jr.
We'll have to put together a list of the most absurd things that he's tried to deconstruct. All right, let's see it. We're gonna
We
eventually
got
we're gonna get to
oh,
the
the
point
other
where
blurb on
somebody
the
is
back
like.
is,
Eventually, we're gonna get to the point where somebody is like, Jesus died for your sins. And you're like, all right, let's see it.
all right, let's see it.
The data doesn't support that, actually.
Actually,
Matthew
the
24,
Bible
when
doesn't
it's
support the
talking the
idea that anybody
context,
came to save you.
the context and theory of Matthew 24, take heed that no man deceive you, is because you need a zer or a woman to deceive you. That's how you negotiate the text. If you're deceived by a man, a zer or a woman, it is.
Alrighty.
This warning is applicable to every biblical topic and all aspects of our daily Christian walk. There's only one way to prevent the great deceiver from having.
Did you see
great
how
influence
look
in
at right when he says deceiver?
What's his
just
name?
watch right when he says deceiver. Watch when he grabs the microphone. Like there's just no.
There's only one way to prevent the great deceiver from having great influence.
He grabs it like it's a wine glass.
No, no. His pinky was out like he was picking up a tea cup.
Yeah.
He feels
Dude,
like
this guy.
He feels exactly like the first time Homer meets the gay guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
An early Simpsons gay.
I want this guy to be the prophet.
Episode.
This guy for profit.
This guy for profit for sure. Although, so that episode, one of the greatest lines in television history was when Marge goes, "Homer, he prefers the company of men," and Homer responds, "Who doesn't?"
My favorite is just the delivery of when he takes Bart to the steel mill.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like,
they took all our best
hard,
names.
we play hard, and then he just shouts, "You're all queers," and one of them just reaches their hand.
Be nice.
Yeah. Oh, be nice.
No,
they took all our best names.
I
Bruce
consider that one of the heights of American tolerance. Like that episode was that thing where it's like, "Oh, be nice." That's the answer. That's the answer. Is to just say, "Oh, be nice."
They're in their steel mill. Leave them alone. They're doing their thing in their place.
Yeah.
Just let them do their thing in their place.
Yeah, exactly. That's tolerance, but like we've gone all the way past that in the last 25 years since that episode, or 30 years at this point. Jeez, how long has it
must
been?
focus on Jesus the Christ.
Ah, there it is.
His truth, his words,
his abs,
his glistening pecs. You beat me.
Alrighty. Have we got a lot more?
And die for so that you and I would never again be separated
from
God.
Dude,
if you get a
that
chance,
guy.
listen to his piano performance, though. He's actually really, really good.
I just have this clip that Jonathan sent, but he is good. And then he like brought his kid on stage to play the piano too. Like his kid ripped it up.
Wow. That guy's cool. The church can
so
use
that
guys like him.
little clip sent all the ex-Mormons into a reathon. Like
Why? Just because he's so femmy, or because
because he says the My Truth stuff and he goes after liberal Jay. Big couple of liberal Jay. That's telling you.
Liberal Jay's
I won't go into this, but I remember I've brought this up before. There's some old episode where I talked about this, but about a year ago, Paul Vanderklay talked about the TV show Midnight Mass, and he talked about the way these guys, Sam Harris does like a nihilistic secular mysticism, and
exist.
One of the things they talk about in it is like there's this part in Midnight Mass where it's all, if you watch that Midnight Mass show on Netflix, the whole entire thing is we're atheists, but we're super mystical. It's almost kind of the same thing as The Witch. We're mystical, and Bill Reel even advocates we're mystics. I call myself a mystic and all that stuff. And one of the things like he points to is all this stuff that they kind of talk about where they just kind of co-opt it into their nihilism and say life is a dream. Life is a wish again and again and again. I'm all of it. I'm everything. I am all. I am all. I am that I am. And they start, using that language. And like I say, philosophically, just replacing nature and the way they use nature does not come off to me as a philosophy rather than a theology. And I did want to go. I don't know if
these people just obviously want God. Just take God.
Yeah.
Just have him. He's put the cat.
I don't want to be responsible for my own choices. Give me something bigger than me that I can blame.
And so like in this show, like these people die because they're killing off this vampire and stuff. But like the whole thing is like they talk about kind of Neil deGrasse Tyson, like we are all stardust and all that stuff. And this guy like burns up and he says, I'm getting one with nature. And she has like this moment where she's getting one with nature. And it's all got these like mystical moments of atheism. But there's part of me that's always like, hey, when you burn up in the atheistic world, that's just burning up, man. Like you're not turning into little Tinkerbells there. You're not becoming, you're
part
just
of you
burning
that is
up.
meaningful is your brain, right? Like if you could have one organ and the rest of it is piloted by a robot, it's your brain. That's the organ you're gonna choose. And outside of that, it's like what I mean. I can't stop shouting. You know what I fucking mean.
Yeah.
When I say like when I say that religion believes in magic and you say, well, everyone believes in magic. No, you know what I mean. When I say that religion believes in an afterlife and that we are eternal, and you say, we're all eternal, we're all stardust. No, you know what I mean. I mean that brain, in atheistic terms, that brain could be put in a vat and it could be just there forever. You are always existing and experiencing shit. You know what I mean, and you know that. Like I shouldn't have to explain that in such stupid terms. You know it. Stop answering questions I'm not asking.
Troy says, of course, Liberace is good at the piano. Did you ever see that Matt Damon movie about Liberace with Michael Douglas?
No, I never saw
that
the movie.
Cracked me up. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. It is so funny. Because like I don't know if you know the story of like who Matt Damon
I know the story.
Yeah, that guy, like Liberace started making him have plastic surgeries to look more like himself. Like if that isn't like kind of showing him that whatever his sexuality was somewhat based in some sort of narcissistic self-love. I don't know how else he'd show that. But I'm going to listen just a second of this and you can go.
Amendment claim.
I'll speed it up. Normal speed, 1.5 speed.
This is religious. This isn't religious. It should be in schools. It shouldn't be in schools. It should apply to the military for conscientious objectors. It shouldn't. Who gets to qualify? Who doesn't? Lots of cases. Is secular humanism a religion? The Supreme Court ruled that it is. Is communism a religion? The Supreme Court ruled that it's not a few times. So they actually have a functional definition of what constitutes a religion and what doesn't, at least for First Amendment jurisprudence. And it is a system of thought, belief, and practice. This is a very broad definition that answers fundamental questions about life and man's role in it, such that it gives rise to duties of conscience. So it's a big philosophical system, thought, belief, and practice. It's organized together. It explains the fundamental questions of life, one way or another, in particular what man's role in those fundamental questions is, not too complicated. And it tells you what you're supposed to do with that as a matter of conscience. What's the right and wrong thing to do? What are your duties of conscience? It answers that question. And that is actually the litmus test that they use particularly for conscientious objection to, say, military service, who qualifies and who doesn't. What are the duties of conscience? If they, does this faith take thou shalt?
It's also worked for vaccine. I helped a friend type up who didn't want to take it, and he is an atheist, but he typed up a religious argument for the VA of why he did not want to take the vaccine, and it worked. It worked for him, and I actually got the letterhead of it, the detail of it from Robert Barnes's website. But they were able to describe out how his secular humanist views could exempt him from the vaccine at the VA, and it worked.
Not kill so seriously that they can't go to war, being the operative question, or are they just trying to use that excuse to dodge the draft? So this is something that's actually been well thought out in First Amendment jurisprudence, but like I said, they denied to identify communism as such, which I think is a failure that maybe in the coming few years we will change. So it's a practical reason why I want to deliver these lectures as well. If this is a theology and all of this woke stuff or Marxist stuff behind it is a religion, then the United States of America and its institutions cannot endorse it. They cannot pass laws forcing people to follow those duties of conscience, because people are guaranteed the freedom of their duty of conscience by the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, as well as the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment, which gives us a very practical long-range goal here that, yeah, people can be as woke or Marxist or communist as they want, but they cannot operate it through the system of the state, which is going to put a big monkey wrench.
You can be as witch as you want. You can be as Mormon as you want. You can do all that stuff as much as you want, but when you start forcing it on others, we all got to buy into the whole big worldview, or we're all lost. That's where I have to like have a problem and stand up against it. But the thing is, like, it seems like so much of like that atheist community, which has been my big complaint with it, is like they were just there to stand up against the Bible Belt, and that's it. None of this weird naturalistic religion stuff. You're not going to stand up against any of that. None of this weird woke shit. You're not going to stand up against any of that. None of this weird.
The gender
he
shit.
makes the case that the Marxism is there, the transgender metaphysical stuff.
No, like,
and the thing is, all of it as
the universe. Watching the SGU guys go down the whole gender thing has been so sad for me.
Yep.
Because it just completely abandoned everything they talked about for a decade, and then went like, well, no, like some people feel like they were born in the wrong body, and so you got to cut off their boobs.
And every once of all of it, especially if you're an adult, because you can't cut off the boobs of kids or growing kids. But if you're an adult, you can do all of it. You can be that witch lady. You can be a full believing witch lady. You can be an atheist witch lady who's lying to yourself that you're not a full believer.
Sure, and I'll probably try to talk you out of it. Like if one of my adult female friends comes and tells me that like I want to lop my tits off because maybe I'm a man, I'll probably try to talk her out of it. I mean, it wouldn't legally stop her from doing it, but like,
because
I'll be sad because I don't think she's doing the correct thing. But
I have you could maybe even call it somewhat, you could call it religious or whatever. It's just my ontological, axiological, epistemological belief is that you should integrate with what your body actually is. And I can't base that in anything. I don't have a God to base that in. I just think you should be naturally what your body is. And I say that to all the transhumanists too.
I have that.
You are your body.
No, I think that in relation to this witch lady, because she at one point, she's trying to, right after she talks about how women age like wine and you should age gracefully and I like my gray hairs or whatever, she then says, because I came into Salt Lake and I go to the big cities and I see all these advertisements for Botox and for breast enhancements, in which I'm on board with it. And then she goes, not that there's anything wrong with any of those. It's just that if you do those things, make sure you're doing them for yourselves and you're not doing it to please the people around you. I'm like, no woman in a vacuum is going to get a boob job.
Yeah.
Like, it's like no man in a vacuum would take those fake dick pills that make your dick bigger.
No,
and I think she's wrong. She's almost right. She was almost right in saying you need to just accept your body for what it is and age gracefully. Even if
the other thing is like I gotta
tell them that. Don't renege on that immediately after saying it. Just be like, look, the boob job, get it if you want, but like here's the thing. I don't think it's a good idea. The Botox, any of this shit, you need. It's not gonna. It's an outward solution to an inward problem.
The other thing is to go all autistic on her analogy. Wines that age well are bad when they're young, and vice versa. Like it's a bad analogy. Like if you're a good young wine, you age badly, and the wines that are only good after a lot of age are terrible when they're young.
Listen to this. Let's see if
the wine ageable are things you don't want in a young wine.
Let's see if this concept she pushes right here would hold up if you tried to apply it universally.
Back to religious abuse is consent. It all boils down to consent. If I want to walk down the street with my top off, if I'm in a city that I legally can, that's my consent. Whether you see me and you choose to sexualize me or not is your consent.
Yeah, that sure holds. Like I mean, think of all the flashers or Foucault's who could make that argument.
Yeah, I'm gonna walk around with my dick out and be like, "What are you talking about, officer? I can't be put on the sex offender registry. Those children chose to sexualize my dick and balls as they were swinging in public.
Exactly. If I show my dick
it's
to
the
children,
5-year-old's fault.
It's up to them to take that as something untoward. Yeah, that's pretty bad.
In their gears, because it's kind of hard to have a state apparatus enforcing a socialist program until it works if you can't run it through the state. They'll find a corporate workaround. They're already kind of working on that, maybe, or some other workaround, but it puts a massive, massive problem in a stumbling block in their path if communism gets recognized as a religion. You can know that by a very simple test. They've had every opportunity. All they do is try to accrue their own power. They've had every opportunity to be named a religion, and they made the case against it rather than for it because they knew that it would not be to their advantage because of the fact that they can't seize the means of state apparatuses if they are a religion. Okay, that was the easy.
Then he goes into like defining what a theology is, and that's where he points out the meta philosophical system that binds being, purpose, knowledge, value, and society, and orients towards the divine, and it all fits into those definitions. If somebody else wants to like argue outside of those definitions, I still don't think it's particularly a religion. I do, but I think the state should, because all of this stuff, the ultimate point is believe what you want. We are down for that, but stop pushing it on others or forcing it to others as some sort of truth claim that can be taught as basic as 2 + 2 = 4. Speaking of which, Jonathan showed us, he did like a whole, I hope he does did he make the Twitter feed of the 2 + 2 = 4?
I don't think so.
So out of some sort of crazy luck on April 4th, which is the exact day of the year that Winston did it in 1984, 2 + 2 = 5, that he wrote it down. Jonathan did this whole extensive chat GPT.
Oh yeah.
All the different ways like a postmodernist or a critical theorist
he did
might
tweet about it.
rationalize 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah.
Did he put it up? Do you have the link to it?
He did. It's the top tweet.
You should watch it and read all the different chat GPTs of all the different ways 2 + 2 = 5. And Christopher says, Lindsay has been doing the 2 + 2 stuff on Twitter so much. Yeah, because he gets in an argument with this guy, David Carr, who's from Harvard, who keeps trying to push the 2 + 2 = 5 stuff mathematically. But Jonathan did just this awesome list of all these different chat GPTs given their philosophical descriptions of how they might argue for, or how like an empiricist might argue against 2 + 2 = 5.
And every one of them is indistinguishable from 1,000 PhD theses.
Yeah.
That got people PhDs and got them jobs.
It was great seeing all. Oh, and speaking of
I
which,
had a couple things this week that made me into an anti-statist, though, is that a couple days ago, a person experiencing homelessness apparently slept in my car.
Oh yeah.
And then today I renewed my passport. $200.
What it used to be. I haven't
don't
done
know.
my passport since
But $200 fucking for a passport.
I used to. Last time I did mine was from a mission. I haven't done it since.
Yeah,
listen
last
to
time I
this.
got one was in the 90s.
I keep coming back to this. I forgot other stuff that they said on this. Like Bill, this. The ultimate point is listen to Lynn today. Listen to Bill Real today, and just the point is they're not doing religion. It's all come on.
I had so much fun one morning. What I did is last week we were talking about Chat GPT, or maybe it was the week before, and for the religion that we come from, it was conference weekend, and so I just started playing with it, and I started asking Chat GPT to answer as historical people. So Christopher Hitchens. And it was so fun. And my favorite one was asking historical Jesus, okay, you come down for General Conference. What do you think as historical Jesus?
Yeah.
And it was like two things. It was like inclusivity, specifically to the LGBTQ community. And then, look inside your hearts and really determine if you're using
ChatGPT is my god
that I would have on my.
Yeah, ChatGPT was created in Blue Church Episteme, lady.
You're
not talking to Jesus there. You're talking to the same Blue Church Episteme that Dan McClellan uses.
We are within a decade or two of people unironically worshiping AI.
But that's like the whole. Of course, DeLynn and those guys went into like the last hour or half hour of their podcast about what Jesus really thinks. And it's all this stuff, and all of what Dan McClellan renegotiates the Bible into, what John DeLynn says, we actually know what the truth is. Anytime you get some scholarly person who's now telling us what the divinity schools tell us, like Jackson Washburn, who was regurgitating Ibram X. Kendi all over Jacob Hansen's page, or all that stuff, it's just Blue Church Episteme at the bottom. Episteme, I don't know how the crap the French say that. It's just their system at the start, at the axiology, the ontology, the epistemology at the start and at the end of it. It's all it is. It's inside of that soup. You're just getting that soup. That's what you're getting. It's just a soup. It's just a soup. It's not. Stop presenting it as neutral reality. I'm so tired of you guys presenting these things like CNN did all these years and other people. That stuff is neutral reality. You're a soup. You're a type of soup.
You see John Leguizamo bitching again about the Mario Bros movie?
He won't stop.
I know.
Oh, because he's getting discriminated against?
No, he's like talking about how they didn't do inclusion right. And I'm like, I don't know, like what's the exact ratio, like the aspect ratio of how far do we have to zoom in to get to the right level of inclusion, and how far can we not zoom in? Because if we hyper zoom in, then we got to use an Italian, right? And he's not an Italian.
Yeah,
he was only ever an Italian caricature, And
Yeah, that's what
there
I'm
are no
saying, like,
such thing as caricatures. There are only Italians and not Italian people.
Isn't
But
he
there
Puerto
are
Rican?
Italian caricatures are not real. They're just caricatures.
Isn't he Puerto Rican? I'm like, because he says they need a Latino character, and I'm like, that is pretty fucking broad, buddy.
Yeah, no, he's really
How
squeezing
many
himself in there.
how many countries does that encompass? It's all of South America. Anybody from South America, anybody from Spain or
It's
Italy
Colombian.
or Portugal.
Well, you want something actually kind of interesting about the whole thing? JJ McCullough did a whole episode on where was Mario made in history? Is he Japanese or is he American or is he
Yeah.
Italian? And it's a really good
that's the thing,
episode
yeah.
on diving into the concepts of
My name is
Yeah.
JJ. So last year
He's
I
a
was
Japanese,
in Washington,
he's
D.C.
an Italian caricature from the minds of Japanese people, of what the Japanese imagined Italians are.
yeah. Let's see what it. Hold on. We're done.
Yeah, I got to get going.
Devoted to Mario souvenirs. And I was like, hey now, Mario's not American. He comes from Japan. Everybody knows that. But then I was like, wait, who actually made Mario? Was it really all Japan, or was it more of a collaboration between Japan and America, with both countries playing an equal-sized role? And then I realized that Mario is a very fascinating character when you start to break down his origin story. He is perhaps one of the most truly globalized characters in existence today, an icon whose roots span multiple cultures and thus truly blurs the lines of what it means to come from somewhere.
It's a good episode. Check that one out.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Mario was invented by Shigeru Miyamoto.
Here's
Well,
the
there you
link
go.
for that. I'll put it in the thing. Okay, dokie. Anything else? Any other crap? Any other contention we need to contend with right before we called off and go back to being non-contentious and perfectly polite, likable, nice, kind, nice, likable people like John DeLynn claims he is, like
you ready for
like
this?
Sam claims she is, like Gerardo claims he is, like
Donald Trump is a perfectly odious man. I would not have not voted for him. This prosecution against him is absolutely political, and it's a terrible strategy.
Okay,
and
you
the
MAGA son of a
Democrats
bitch.
are going to regret this.
Hey, we aren't political. We aren't political.
Oh, that's right. We're not.
We don't politically any political
this
way.
Prosecution is.
We've been perfectly neutral.
Such a nakedly politically motivated prosecution, and I think it's going to backfire. I think that Trump could use his mugshot as his campaign.
They made sure to not do a mugshot.
Yeah, they didn't do a mugshot.
Yeah, they didn't do it.
They were aware of that. They were aware it would become like a freedom fighter.
Yeah, the funniest shit
is this is such a bad move.
The funniest shit is even CNN and all those talking heads dudes are like, okay, well now that you've seen the sheet, is it everything you expected? And his lady's like, yeah, it's everything I expected, and it's underwhelming.
So what are the accusations of Clarence Thomas accepting the luxury trips, as if the stuff is like what Trump did was so obviously done by so many other politicians. Clarence Thomas did that, I don't know the details of Clarence Thomas, but the problem is it's people claim it's whataboutism. It's not whataboutism when it's the exact same thing that's not getting prosecuted.
I only read the BBC article about the Clarence Thomas thing today, and on the surface, it's one of those things where it seems like, well, this looks like cherry picking.
That's the problem. It's there's half of me is like, if it's all crimes, fine, do it to all of them. Do it to all of them. Yeah. I'm fine with that. I bet you all of us, if we could trade, you guys take one off the table, we take one off the table. Let's do that.
Yeah, exactly. If Trump deserves jail for this, Hillary's next, right?
Well, that was Nick Rekieta's take on it. Is he was saying, look, the average American commits 8 to 10 felonies a week or something like that. Because of laws that we don't give a shit about. It's so that they can have something on you at all times if they want.
Yeah,
it's kayfabe. Empty bedlam is correct. Who really cares? That's who. Politics. One of the things that was pointed out, and I think it was kind of funny, is I'll pull it up. We'll end with this. Danny from Ryan Long's channel. Hold on.
If you're in politics, I don't believe you. End of story. That seems like
that is correct. That's so correct.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Well, that's things I've said for a long time, where it's like, it doesn't matter if you say all the things that I want to hear. If you're willing to align yourself with one of the major political parties, I can't take you seriously as as a moral, principled person.
Yeah. Hold on. Where'd it go? Here it is. Coming right up.
All right, then we gotta wrap it up.
Screen. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, look at that doggo. That doggo figured out his brain puzzle.
Yeah, he figured out the brain puzzle, and he is ready to
walkies.
Dang it, man.
Where's your clip, dude?
Does he not have it at the top of his channel? Here it is. Coming right up. La la la.
He is in their custody at this time.
So at this moment at 1:24 p.m. Eastern Time, Donald J. Trump is.
They got the
With the recent arrest of former President Donald J. Trump, America has been thrust into unprecedented turmoil. April 4th, 2023 is a day that will go down in the history books. So why not make sure you remember this moment the right way with your very own Donald J. Trump 2023 arrest commemorative gold coin. This commemorative coin is plated with 18-karat gold to provide you with the opulence and grandeur that only a Trump commemorative coin could provide. Whether you hate Donald J. Trump with every fiber in your being, or you think this is the greatest miscarriage in United States history, this coin is for you. And with the price of gold shooting up due to Joe Biden's inflation, for those of you celebrating, or Vladimir Putin's inflations, for those of you commemorating this dark day, you're going now before they're sold out. These coins are sure to sell out, so make sure to get yours today for the low, low price of only $99, which includes the deluxe box, as well as shipping and handling to anywhere in the United States. So call now and order your very own Donald Trump arrest commemorative coin. The number is 1-888-9.
It's kayfabe. It's all kayfabe, man.
Dude,
But
that's
it's so
funny.
stupid. But yeah.
Madness.
Yeah, the Trump stuff is some straight up bull crap, but
I don't know, like, because I mean, part of me wants Trump to run because I am one of those guys. Like, I like that
the kayfabe. Let's keep the kayfabe going.
Yeah, I like the disruption. I enjoy that part of it. I don't like everything else.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I don't like the part where our whole society is going down to poop.
Yeah, I don't like the endless lying and bullshit. I like the disruption.
Well, he's a disruption. He wasn't part of the plan in the same way that like an actual wrench just falling into the gears of a machine isn't part of the plan. He's calculated.
Like,
I've always put it this way.
I like the idea of somebody kicking the table over, but I'd still like to have.
There was this old saying. I don't know if it's totally true medically or not. I'd need Dan McClellan, the MIT professor, to let's see what you got. But they used to say that you couldn't. One of the reasons you couldn't ever cure herpes is because you had to treat it when it was activated. And one of the things that they were trying to figure out how to do is how to keep it activated so they could figure out how to treat it. In my view, Trump was the thing that activated the herpes. Like there was a herpes in our system that we could not see or treat or have very apparent, which was the whole cathedral, deep state, blue episteme, whatever sort of thing.
Yeah.
That Trump, being whatever the crap he is, activated so you could visualize it and visualize it ezy. That's been the best thing about him, and everything else is whatever. So,
all righty.
Morgan
all
just
right.
texted a Babylon Morgan texted a Babylon Bee article to me that says Democrats vow to arrest as many political opponents as it takes to defeat fascism.
Good job, B.
Yeah.
All righty, kids.
We'll show that
Did we do
other
it?
team to stop being so othering. Well, just like they're teaching us to not. Sam's going to teach us to not be so othering.
What are
And
the
then
chances nobody says something stupid for the next week?
0, but we got plenty
right,
that
we'll
we
be
already
back.
didn't cover. We still need to talk
Yeah.
about the everything everywhere all at once. And all that.
Oh yeah, no, and I need to watch the last 15 minutes of it because whatever the thing that the guy sent us was missing the end.
You definitely need to see the whole thing if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, no, because like I mean, we're not supposed to talk about it, but I want to talk about it because that's the first movie I've seen
Holy
in a
crap.
long time. Like in the
Ooh.
sense of like, remember when movies used to like enthrall you and were full of magic?
I came into that movie blind. I knew nothing about it.
Yep.
I
As a
came into it
postmodern
having
figure, I
everybody gush
can't.
about it.
As a postmodern figure, I can't watch movies or shows or anything anymore. I'm just too aware of it all being poop. So, but
Yeah.
what you do? All right.
Alrighty.
Have a good
Later,
night,
kid.
y'all.
So, yeah.